Good afternoon. This is a hearing of the Chatham Conservation Commission being held on September 28th, 2022, in accordance with the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Chatham Wetlands Protection Bylaw and Regulations. My name is Bob Rawls, and I serve as the chair. Hearings are broadcast live on Channel 18 and are also recorded for the on-demand archives available on the town's website. Today's hearing is being conducted in person, by phone, and by video conference. The agenda, instructions on how to attend, and copies of documents for review are posted on the town's website. To all participants, after hearing from applicants, representatives, and interested parties, I'll ask for comments and questions from commissioners. Whether attending by phone or online, please remain muted unless you are speaking. If you're attending by phone and wish to speak, use *6 to unmute and address the chair, then use *6 again to unmute. If you're online and you're not a commissioner, please keep your camera and microphone turned off unless you have been recognized. Indicate that you wish to speak by using the raise hand feature. When recognized, please identify yourself for the record. The commission will vote on each matter by roll call so that we have a record of a quorum. I'll now ask each commissioner to indicate their presence. Vice Chair Bob Delvecchio.
Present.
Janet Williams.
Present.
Karen Latin.
Present.
Mary Sullivan, I believe, is not with us today, and it looks like it's true. Elise Gordon.
Present.
Cheryl Meservey.
Present.
And I am here. So we do have a quorum. Nikki Smith, who is remote today and is Chatham's conservation agent, will now lead us through today's agenda. If you're able to do that, Nikki.
Yes, so the first item up is a request for determination of applicability. 92 Oldfield Bend, Christopher Bolchuro and Natalie Kirkland, map 14J, parcel W22, CWP number R22-9, construction of a Title V subsurface sewage disposal system.
Good afternoon,
And
David
David
Clark.
Clark.
Oh, sorry.
Good afternoon, David.
Good afternoon, David Clark, Clark Engineering, on behalf of the applicants. They recently had a Title V inspection done, and the system failed. So we are here with a request for determination, basically to replace the system in the same location as the existing system. Unfortunately, the new code requires a slightly bigger system than what's there now, but we're trying to fit the system in this portions of the property that are already disturbed. The floodplain, believe it or not, comes all the way into this section of Oldfield Bend. The source of flooding is Frostfish Creek. It works its way in over Roland Drive, across the tennis courts, across the street, and then this is the easterly limits of that flood area. There's no way to get to the construction area except through the floodplain. We try to keep the system as far away from the floodplain as possible, but the southern end of the leach field is very close to the floodplain, and because of the presence of groundwater, the system has to be elevated a little bit, so we're showing a retaining wall on that south side. There's an ornamental tree that most likely will have to come out, well, it definitely has to come out, and there's another similar ornamental tree near it that's probably in the way of construction access, and those are non-native trees that were planted by a previous owner, so we're not showing any replacement. But the house is on the market, and they most likely the new owners would go through a landscape redesign for the property anyway, so we're not showing replacement trees.
Okay, thanks,
That's it.
David. How high up are you raising?
Top of the wall is elevation 13, and the grade at the existing grade at the wall is about elevation 10, so 3 feet.
3 feet.
On that end, and there's really no grade changes on the north end.
Is this past Board of Health?
We haven't filed it with
You
Board
haven't
of
filed
Health.
yet,
No
right.
variance is required with Board of Health, so it's just a administrative review of the issuance of a permit.
Right. Okay. Anyone have issues, questions? Well,
I got something, David. Those two trees that are one's close to that new leach field and the other one is in the access area. Those are crab apples, and they do provide some food value for birds and wildlife. Is there a way you can plant at least one native tree after the
I will-
project is complete?
Well, the owners were very concerned that the trees had to come out.
Yeah.
And we did provide them with an alternative design that did not require us coming to you, but it was above the driveway, the drive-under garage retaining wall, and we would have had to take out probably 36 trees. So that was, but they conceded that this was better. But they would probably want to plant trees, so I would say yes to
Okay.
the request.
Maybe you can work that out with Nikki.
Yeah. Yep, not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
anyone else? Concerns, comments, none? Okay. So it sounds like, yeah, it looks like you've got no, very few alternatives here, so I think we could probably safely make a motion. I don't know about the 2, 3, and the 1. Nikki, advise us, please.
That would be a -2 because it's work within the resource area because of the flood zone, but doesn't have a negative impact. So -2.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the request for determination of applicability, -2, request for determination of applicability for 92 Old Field Bend.
Latin second.
Roll call vote. Bob,
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Elise,
Aye.
Cheryl,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Okay, the next one was a request for an order of conditions. This was a mistake on our part. I think it was supposed to be continued to the October 5th work session. So 209 Seaview Street, Town of Chatham, map 16E, parcel S26, SE 103565, reconstruction and expansion of the 7th and 9th T. So we're just still waiting to hear from the golf department on how they feel about the fertilizers, irrigation, that kind of thing. So that is on, or they're requesting continuance to October 5th.
Make a motion that we continue 209 Seaview Street, order of conditions until a work session on October 5th, 2022.
Latin second.
Roll call vote. Cheryl,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Elise,
Aye.
and I vote aye.
Let's just keep going at this pace.
All right, next we have the request for an amended order of conditions, 28 Sears Road, Thomas and Jessica King, map 11A, parcel 16, SE 103538, expansion of patio area, and an addition of a boulder retaining wall.
Good afternoon, David.
So this is phase 2. So phase 1 was heard on 8/24.
Good afternoon, David Clark on behalf of the Kings. As stated, we're looking for amended order of conditions to cover the change in the project. The two changes are that they'd like to bring in some small boulders and put it along the work limit on the north side of the pool. The boulders would be inside the fence that's already been approved, so we felt that it wouldn't cause an interruption in wildlife movement because the fence is already there or permitted to be there. The purpose of the rocks is to avoid trucking a lot of fill off-site. They'll be able to grade most of the fill that's coming out for the pool between the rocks and the pool. And the intent is to cover the rocks so they're not exposed, and cover that with an erosion control mat, and then follow the restoration plan that Blue Flags prepared as far as what gets put there. And then the second change is a change to the patio around the pool. And there is almost a 200 square foot increase in the amount of patio within the 50 to 100. If you look at the restoration mitigation plan that Blue Flags did, their restoration of the back portion of the property is far and exceeds the increase in site coverage within the 50 and 100. That's it.
That's it? All right. Thanks, David. So mitigation already proposed should cover
Yes.
decreased coverage inside the approved fence. That'll be area, I guess, where there was lawn already, going to be lawn.
The restoration area was in the undisturbed portions of the lot to the north, where some invasives exist, and it was mostly a restoration of the understory. It's not really lawn back there, but it's awful sparse and.
What I mean is where the rocks are going.
Oh, where the rocks are going.
Yeah.
Yes, that was proposed lawn before, under the previous application.
Or shall we
And-
say fescue, I hope.
But I think Teresa's plan showed more substantial plantings along the fence.
Yeah.
And so those will now be incorporated within the rocks.
Oh. Okay.
So we didn't list the rocks as site coverage because we're covering them and planting.
Okay, I didn't quite pick up on that, but that's, okay. So, in other words, the shrubs that were to go there are now being interspersed among the rocks?
Yeah, works, yeah.
Will the rocks be above ground?
About half of them, or
Half-
two-thirds of
half
them will be
raised,
above
okay.
ground. It's just, it provides a little more support for the fill, and we can go to a little steeper slope. But we also need the erosion control mat now
Yeah, okay.
to stabilize it in the short term.
All right, so Janet, you look like you,
Yeah, I'm a little perplexed, thanks, Bob, David, about how, so I see the cross-section on the, showing how the proposed grade comes down and covers the rocks, and then it drops quite steeply on the other side of the boulders. And
Yep.
then there's, I assume, some plantings and then the fence. What happens to the soil on the side of the boulders? What stabilizes that slope
The erosion
there?
control fabric, and we intend to put some of the more substantial shrubs in that also.
And there'll be adequate soil for them to?
Yes.
To root?
Yeah.
And they will hold that? Okay, I've never seen it quite, why do this rather than a retaining wall?
They don't want to look at a retaining wall, and the idea was to plant it. And so they felt, the landscape construction company felt this was the best solution that fit what the Kings wanted to look like at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, it's an innovative approach to this. I haven't seen it before. We'll be curious to watch it and see if it, because, I mean, frankly, nobody wants to look at a retaining wall if they don't have to. So maybe it's one way, but I just look at that slope and wonder, hope that it is stabilized.
Well, that's the purpose of the fabric. I didn't specify exactly what it is, but I would recommend that it have a 24-month degradation at a minimum, because it's on the north slope, and the vegetation might take a little longer to get really established.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Karen?
I'm just curious, what's the reasoning for increasing the patio?
It's something that they wanted after we had filed for the previous permit, and rather than slowing things down, they actually thought they were going to have this pool this last summer. And so, because we're modifying the permit, things didn't work out as far as installing the pool for the summer, obviously. And since we were want to install the rocks, they thought it was a good opportunity to incorporate what they really want for a patio.
Okay.
I mean, it's all area within inside the fence. It's no longer going to be wildlife habitat because of the fence. So it's either patio or lawn.
Just a quick follow-up. Does the addition of the boulders change the access routes or the access protocol? You're going to be, the machinery coming around, I think
Still coming
it's
around the east side of the building. Yeah.
the north, or the right, as I'm looking at it.
Yes.
Is that- Yeah, okay. All right, no, it's narrow there, but okay.
I just have one little thing, David. On this plan here, showing the cross-section of the boulders and, the retaining area, is there any way you can just put a note that the plantings will be planted within the boulders?
Sure.
Just so, when it comes to looking at it later, we can be able to know that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Bob, at COC time. Anyone else? Elise?
Dave, could you remind me what the patio is made of?
It'll be impervious. I mean, not impervious. It'll be pervious.
Okay, thank you.
Still concerns?
No, this is something different. Why do the boulders, I mean, they go around on one side a little bit, which I understand if you're elevating, that makes sense. On the other side, the patio side, they stop. So, right around the shed, is that because of the shed, or is there, it looks like there's a gap, and will that be an issue?
No, because we're able to, we don't need to fill on that side because of the shed, so we need to maintain access to the shed. And so the height of the wall will probably be diminishing as you get to that corner.
Oh, okay.
And we meet the existing grade.
Okay. So I don't hear any, the only thing I heard was, well, I didn't hear any changes, did I? From anyone, any suggestions, requests? Okay, so I guess we're ready.
Well, he may want to reflect that it is going to diminish on that side, because I was thinking we were having a 3-foot high all the way across. So if they're diminishing, it probably would be good to say that they will be, there will be a slope going down. Because to me, it seemed like there would be an issue because we're building it up and then all of a sudden it stops. So just a note saying that would be diminishing probably would be good.
Okay.
All right, so, yeah, Bob asked for a note that indicating that the plants are interspersed among the rocks, and then Karen's asking for that last note. But other than that, I think that we are ready.
Make a motion that we approve Phase 2 amended order of conditions for 28 Sears Road.
Latin second.
Roll call vote. Bob?
Aye.
Shannon?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Elise?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Next, we have the beginning of the notice of intents. The first one is 665 Fox Hill Road, William and Allison Douglas, map 12M, parcels 20C7 and 20AC42, SE 103581, at-grade stairs to the side yard, stairs to a deck, splash pool and deck, path and stairs over the coastal bank, landscaping and land management.
Good afternoon. For the record, Thad Eldridge, East Southeast. Teresa and Allison are online. Coming in, and I'll just call up the plans. So this property's been before you before. Blue Flax Design did some of the work out in the front of the property or the north side of the property with the installation of a walkway. And at the time, they wanted to install stairs, but that required a zoning special permit, and that was left for now as there were more improvements that would be proposed on the property. We will be filing this with the Zoning Board of Appeals. We just wanted to get before you first to get the initial feedback. Just to review the list, we do have a set of stairs that's proposed, at-grade steps to get from the front yard into the side yard. There's the proposal to add new stairs alongside the building to get rid of the stairs in the middle of the building. A rinse station is proposed underneath that set of stairs. A splash pool is proposed, and this is really, it's almost an elevated pool. The entire thing will have an underdrain under it so that we do not increase the impervious nature within the floodplain. And then there is a deck proposed around it. Where the stairs are now, there will be a shelf constructed for the pool equipment that also needs to meet the floodplain requirement of elevation 12.1. Blue Flax has created a landscape plan for the front of the property, and we're leaving a path in place so that the Douglases and their children can get across the street to their other lot. That path will continue. Blue Flax is proposing to remove the invasive species throughout this lot and plant it. That path will continue to a set of stairs going over the coastal bank and down to the beach. And primarily it's for access. Walking down the road is quite dangerous. The associations have gotten together, put 3 stop signs at the intersection here because of the people driving by, and the fences that were installed right up against the pavement further to the east make it very dangerous for especially the children to get down to the association dock. So that's the primary reason why they're looking to access over their own property to get to the beach, to have a safer way to get to that facility. We've provided profiles of the proposed stairs and of the proposed pool. And as I said, because the top of that pool is so high, this is almost an elevated pool. And we'll be able to put a full underdrain underneath of it. If Teresa wants to chime in with hers.
Sure.
Great.
Is this an appropriate time for me to speak through the chair?
Yes, it would be. Yes, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Teresa Sprague, Blue Flax Design on behalf of the Douglases. We are proposing to provide mitigation in the form of approximately 2,580 square feet of lawn removal within the 100-foot buffer zone, ACEC and land subject to coastal storm flowage, so to the south of the proposed soak pool. And lawn would be removed. The lawn area will be planted with native grass and wildflower seed that's shown on the plan. The existing beach plum and existing bayberry will remain. Some minor regenerative pruning might be required on that. And then we're proposing to add additional clusters of beach plum, Virginia rose, and winterberry holly. We are, as Thad pointed out, proposing to maintain a 4-foot wide path through that meadow area that would allow the Douglases access from their property across Fox Hill Road to the other side. On the other side of the street, we have a really interesting mix of healthy native vegetation with some more intensely invaded areas right along Fox Hill Road. We've got an area that's approximately 70% invaded. That sort of tapers down as we head to the east to about a 20 to 25% invasive species to native vegetation plant community, with some autumn olive mixed in with some eastern red cedars that we'd be proposing to selectively remove and treat. The invasive species management area is approximately 5,700 square feet. As we get deeper into the property outside of the area that's shaded in green, where we're more intensively managing invasive vegetation, we do have some bittersweet that's throughout the area. We're proposing to just selectively treat and remove that bittersweet and allow the area to naturally regenerate. Native vegetation located throughout that area includes little blue stem yarrow, milkweed, bayberry, some beach plum, some large eastern red cedars, as well as several sapling and seedling size eastern red cedars found throughout, Virginia rose and sumac located throughout that area. So this area, if we, with some selective bittersweet removal, will be allowed to naturally regenerate. The more heavily invaded areas will remove the invasive species, seed those areas, and then plant. In total, we're proposing 59 shrubs, 31 switchgrass on this site, and then the 2,580 square feet of lawn removal and transformation of that to native grass and wildflower meadow. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the proposed planting, invasive species management, mitigation, et cetera. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Teresa. Opening it up to anyone with questions, comments. I don't see any hands at the moment, so I'll
Kick it off.
I had a few. So the increase in coverage, that is primarily from the stairs. The increased coverage in the NDZ. You say the coverage table says you're adding 110 to the NDZ and 40 to the outer aura.
Yes, that's specifically within the buffers, not within the floodplain.
Right, right.
You'd have the stairs, a couple of steps coming around. Those are in the outer, but the stairs are in the NDZ. That's the primary coverage increase.
That's the primary reason. Okay. Yeah, so I think the rest of my questions are for Teresa. Your planning map shows a honey locust being removed. I couldn't tell where it was, or it was just a note there in the middle of the map. And I just wanted to know where it is and why you want to remove it.
So there is a red X, the existing honey locust to be removed. There's an X that it's pointing to. It's right up against the existing deck. It'll be in the footprint of the soak pool.
Oh.
It's right up against the existing deck. It's really somewhat of a
Okay.
hazard.
Sort of just, the line
The
disappeared.
line, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
got it.
Yeah, it's definitely whether or not the soak pool were to be installed, it is something that the Douglases have wanted removed for quite some time. It is somewhat of a hazard. It's shading the roof. The roof has recently been redone. It's shading the deck. The deck, it drops a lot of debris onto the deck. It gets very slippery, and the deck has to be power washed. The roof has to be power washed consistently. It's a lovely tree for a completely different location, but for right up against a deck in a house, it's really becomes a hazard. So not only would we be proposing to remove it for the installation of the pool, but regardless of whether the pool was being installed, we'd be proposing to remove it simply because it really is a hazard for the structure.
All right, and you're not proposing a replacement tree?
We aren't proposing a replacement tree. We are proposing some Arrowwood viburnum to run down along the eastern property line. We're sort of providing some buffer between the Douglases and then the house directly to the east where a significant amount of bamboo, we had previously permitted invasive species management and some restoration in there, and that bamboo has just recently been removed. So we are proposing some screening planting in between there. As I said, on the water side or of the property, the side across on the opposite side of the Fox Hill Road, there is a significant number of.
Whoops, you just froze up, if you can hear me, Teresa. Yeah.
Mitigate for loss of
Okay,
biomass in that tree.
Teresa, we lost a fair amount of what you just said. You froze up and,
Oh, my
about for
apologies.
the last 60 seconds or 90 seconds worth.
Okay, I think I was just stating that we are proposing additional shrubs to be planted within the meadow area to mitigate for the loss of biomass on that tree, but that there are a significant number of cedars as well as other tree species on the water side of the property, so on the other side of Fox Hill Road, including many cedar seedlings and saplings, so we aren't proposing any additional tree planting in this area.
Okay, well, I will just say, as you probably would anticipate, that we generally have a one-to-one replacement policy, if you will. And it would strike me that there is a place on this pretty large property for one if you could find a place.
I mean, we could certainly do that. As you can see, the existing septic components and leach field are located in the area where we're proposing to remove lawn and install meadow. So there's really not an appropriate place to plant a tree in that area. There is a very large existing pitch pine that is located in that southwest or western corner, I guess we'll call it, portion. It sort of shades the driveway. There's a very heavy tree canopy edge that leans over the driveway that's outlined
Well,
on the plan.
I'm sorry, to me, it's okay to put it across the street, too.
There is like I said, where our goal is to not do any, you can see all the cedar trees that have been located on the east-southeast plan. And then throughout that entire meadow area, there's a significant number of cedar saplings and seedlings. I just
Okay.
would, just to dig those up to plant a new tree.
I see
doesn't
what you mean, yeah, so
necessarily-
in essence, you don't really see a spot.
No, and I think that that's why we were proposing some of the larger shrubs in the meadow area to sort
Okay.
of mitigate for the loss of biomass on that honey locust tree. And it's, as far as what, value that tree is providing, it's right up against the deck. It's literally touching the existing deck on the
Oh, I
house.
see
So,
why you want to take it out, yeah, there's no question why
Yeah.
you want to take it out.
yeah.
But I think Janet maybe has a question.
You do?
Oh, I thought you said your hand was up.
Yeah. Well,
Waving it
are
around.
are you?
I'm done because I thought maybe you were going to follow up with.
Well, I'm going to follow up on an earlier question that you
Okay.
asked about, and it's for Thad. It's about the coverage charts. So you have the NDZ, the outer aura, the floodplain, and then you have another at the top, the resource. What is that if it's not floodplain, outer aura, or NDZ?
That would be below the coastal bank.
So that 80 square feet, so that's the stairs.
Correct.
Okay, so it's, the stairs then are partly in the coastal bank and partly in the NDZ? Is that-
Correct. Those stairs are right over the top of the coastal bank to get down to the beach.
Okay, so let's talk about the stairs for a moment.
Okay.
There were two association docks that I could see standing there, one
Yes.
to the north, one to the south. Which one do these people use?
They have rights to the one to the south.
But not the north, that's a different association? Okay. And so I recognize that fence is problematic. Nonetheless, it's there. But there's no other path that would go through this area that wouldn't require the installation of stairs? there
No,
any
that's
other
a
way they
pretty
could-
decent bank through the entire frontage of the property.
And then, so you have path that transitions to ramp that has a landing and then stairs?
Mhm.
Can you explain that? So it's a grassy or a footpath?
Just a plain footpath.
Okay, then why a ramp?
To try and get some elevation underneath the stairs. I mean, generally, you're looking for a 4-foot elevation underneath. This is a northerly bank or a southerly exposure, so not having the height is going to be less detrimental to the plant
So
community
the ramp
underneath.
actually slopes up then
The
to
ramp will
to
slope
reach
up.
the top, the landing. How large is the ramp?
That's about 6 to 8 feet,
And the landing about the same, or is that, what's the size?
about the same, yes.
About the same. So those are the pervious hardscape that's accounted for in the NDZ?
Yes.
40 square feet? And then the stairs themselves will be, what did you just say, 6 feet or so above grade?
No, the goal is to get it as much above grade as possible. Those stairs are only 2 to 3 feet above grade. To get them higher, we would have to go up even higher with a ramp and then go back down, which
Yeah.
seems,
Well, they need to be high enough so that the native vegetation that currently exists is not disturbed, and yet not so high that you have some big structure sitting on a coastal bank. So for Teresa, is this an area of the coastal bank where the native vegetation is currently in good shape? And what is the impact of putting the stairs over them? You're muted.
Thank you, sorry about that.
It's okay.
The native vegetation is in good shape over the coastal bank in this area. As far as the stair construction, I'm going to defer to Thad on how the piles that are going to hold the stairs up are going to be installed. I think there will be some minimal temporary impacts. I think the stairs will provide better access than the property owners traversing the bank without the elevated stairs. I think if they were to just walk down over the bank onto the beach, that there would be more damage to the bank than there will be with the stairs in place.
Okay. Well, given that there is a existing native vegetation and you're not proposing to plant in that area and put the elevated stairs over it, it increases, I think, the likelihood, and we would require the usual plank spacings to maximize the amount of light penetration. Okay. There's a note in there somewhere that says that mapped endangered habitat is far from the beach.
yeah, it's the winter flounder habitat. It's out in the water.
Oh, it's out there, okay, I just thought so. Okay, that's it for me, thank you.
Just for an image of it, here's the property, and the habitat is out in the water.
The green area?
Correct.
Okay.
It's both estimated and priority.
Karen?
And what is the path going to be that, Teresa, that's going through to get to the ramp and the stairs and everything? Is that going to be a fescue? Is that going to be something else?
It's going to be the native vegetation that's there with just a mowed 4-foot wide path.
Okay.
One width of a lawnmower that allows them access through that area. Only to be mowed as necessary to provide access, but there's going to be no improvement to the path otherwise.
Is it going to be marked that this is a path or something so that people don't use sort of another area maybe and trample?
I think we could certainly mark it. That wouldn't be a problem at all. We could potentially even plant a few shrubs along the edge of it. I guess what I would not recommend doing is, I know oftentimes we propose the installation of split rail fence or a single rail fence to demarcate meadow from lawn area. In this particular case, I don't know that that would be appropriate to line this path with fencing on either side of it. We have enough issues with fencing on this street right now. But we could certainly create some marker with shrubs that kind of mark the edge of the path to make it clear that the path winds down through the middle.
That probably would be good, considering that it does wind, and so it's not a direct, and I can just see people taking a little shortcut.
Yep, we could definitely do that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
I got a few, Teresa. Will there be a pool fence? Or maybe this is for Thad.
That might
So-
be good then.
There will be a railing necessary along the edge of the deck. Everything else is so far above grade that no pool fence would be required.
Okay. And will the fescue micro clover lawn be irrigated at all with new irrigation? I know it's right now it's not.
It's not, this is Cape Cod lawn, and this would simply be to overseed anything that's disturbed with the installation of the pool. So there would be no proposal for any permanent in-ground irrigation. We would, require some irrigation just to get it established. And then just like the rest of the lawn on this area, it would be on its own.
Could we make a note of that on the plan? No permanent
Maybe.
irrigation?
Yep, I think our plan notes say that we are proposing temporary irrigation to get things established, and then temporary irrigation will be removed. And that drip irrigation will be used for all shrub and tree plantings, but we can add no permanent irrigation.
Thank you. And since Karen talked about the markings, between the meadow and that grassy clover area, could we put some marking along there so the meadow doesn't get mowed in the future?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and the other thing was the stairs that Janet talked about. I think, would it be appropriate after they're constructed to put some new plantings along the edge of that after the bank is trampled and so forth?
Yes, we could certainly add that. I would recommend, depending on the time of year that the stairs are being installed, that any disturbance around there be replanted with American beach grass, just temporarily. So let's assume that there's going to be a winter installation of these stairs. We'd propose to plant bare root American beach grass in any of the areas that are disturbed around the stairs, and then let the rest of the existing native vegetation naturally revegetate the area, but the beach grass will do a good job of keeping that stable in the meantime.
Okay, and also underneath the ramp, what happens there with the added shade?
I suspect that underneath the ramp, the vegetation over time, I'm not sure what material the ramp is proposed to be. Maybe Thad could answer that.
That was just proposed to be wood.
Okay, so likely any of the existing vegetation under the ramp area would be shaded. And so that vegetation over time would decline.
Okay, and is there any way we can plant shade tolerant something underneath there?
That I'm not sure the height or the elevation of that ramp, how high that will be above grade.
I mean, that goes from about a foot above grade down to grade.
Yeah, so it's probably not going to really support the growth of vegetation underneath the ramp.
Okay.
Just to interject, spacing the boards
We
wider,
can space the boards.
would that would that make a difference, Teresa?
I think we could propose to plug a little bit of Pennsylvania sedge underneath around the edges. There's some Pennsylvania sedge existing in the meadow area, and it is a little bit more shade tolerant. Maybe directly underneath the center of the ramp, we won't have really strong vegetation growth, but certainly around the edges, we could plant that.
It will serve as a little hiding spot for the rabbits to get away from the birds.
Eagles.
It's
To
habitat.
come eat all our wildflowers.
Stairs as habitat. I never thought of it that way before.
Okay, that's all I had, thank you.
So Teresa, you say you're going to try to plant some shade tolerant, is that what I heard from all that?
Yes,
Okay.
Pennsylvania sedge.
Penn's Edge, yeah.
And along the edge of the stairs too, with some beach grass.
And at that, you say, can you make the gap wider? What's
Yeah.
what's as wide as you can make it?
What do you generally recommend at this point?
We've gone to 3/4 sometimes.
3/4?
Yeah.
And we'll go with the
We like
3/4.
that better than half.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else?
And just one last clarification. So this pool is designed similar to the one on Old Harbor where it's partly below grade and partly above grade?
This pool is actually above grade,
Totally
totally.
above. So, okay, so the grade is right there. I see that, and there's a flood. So it's an above-ground pool surrounded by, the deck surrounds it.
The deck surrounds it, and then on the water side, they would put clapboard over it to emulate the rest of the building.
Okay, and then I see the crushed stone and the flood vents so that there is no change to the absorption
To keep
ability.
everything flowing.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
I think I just have a question/observation, and to Teresa, I guess, when project is over with, it would appear that it'd be largely almost all native between the house and the water?
That's correct. In addition to that, on the Strong Island Road side of the house, that area where we had previously permitted the footpath, that area has been completely planted out with bearberry and native vegetation. So the goal here has been to really transform this site into almost an entirely native plant community.
Yes, okay, very good. So
That side does look good.
this is where we often try to go, but never really get there. So I'm glad that the applicant is on board with that approach, and I'm happy to see it. All right, so just a few changes in the notes, but I think otherwise there's nothing I think that we have to wait on, is my assessment. So, given that.
And that's October 5th, Nikki? For the work session?
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Make a motion that we continue 665 Fox Hill Road to the work session for an order of conditions on October 5th, 2022.
Latin second.
Roll call vote. Bob?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Elise?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
The next notice of intent is for 62 Oyster Pond Furlong, Jeremy Philo, map 13E, parcel 3322, SE 103579, construction of a swimming pool, building addition, and hardscape alterations.
Good afternoon, David Clark, Clark Engineering on behalf of the Philos. I don't know who was on the commission way back when, but it wasn't way back when. The previous owners had a extensive wetland restoration project for the old bog that's north of this house. And that was a very successful project. So successful that it moved the BVW closer to the house. We had the wetlands flagged again by blue flags, and basically the BVW moved closer to the house, equal to the extent of the restoration plantings that blue flags did several years ago. And that's north of the house. The other resource areas here, there's a ditch that's listed as a blue line on the USGS map, so rather than going through an extensive monitoring of that ditch to see if it flows, especially in the summer that we just had, where it wouldn't count anyways, we just, for permitting purposes, calling it a river under the Rivers Act. And then to the south of us, on the other side of Absegami Run, is another old bog. That's on the east side of that bog is the stormwater controls that the town installed as part of the sewer project. That ditch continues on through that old bog and then enters a culvert and goes under a couple of properties and out to the oyster pond. The Filos just purchased this property last year, I believe, and are looking to do some improvements, basically putting a small addition on and a swimming pool. They worked real hard to get all that activity as close to the house and as far away from the resource areas as possible. One of the things they're doing is they're giving up the garage on the west side of the house, which is that garage's access is a paved driveway that comes very close to the ditch and the BVW. Since they don't need that garage anymore, we're removing a considerable amount of pavement associated with that. They want to keep what's remaining for overflow parking for the property. Then on the east side of the house is where the addition's proposed, as well as the pool. A small portion of the addition, just a few square feet, is within 50 feet of the new BVW delineation. And then the swimming pool is in the 50 to 100 of squeezed between the 50 and hundreds of both wetlands, the ones to the north and the one to the south. And the other part of the project is that they don't need the big circular driveway anymore, so they're removing the southerly portion of it, and that adds to the overall site improvements. Within the NDZ, by removing all the pavement and driveway, there's a net reduction of 438 square feet, which offsets the construction of the addition and swimming pool. And then within the 50 to 100 and the outer aura of the river front, there's a 100 square foot increase. So overall, there's a net reduction on the property. Mr. Philo is an architect and has provided a landscaping plan. I believe he followed the planting list very closely, knowing how sensitive this property is. And I believe he's on the line to answer questions regarding the landscape plan, should you have any. This does not require zoning board of appeals. It's a conforming lot, and the additions meet the setback requirements of the bylaw. And I don't believe any trees have to come out. It's another design consideration that no trees have to come out.
Okay, thank you,
I
David.
thought I saw
One
one
tree.
marked.
One tree.
I think there is a tree.
There's what?
Red spruce.
Yeah,
Oh, a dead spruce.
Red.
Oh, red.
Oh,
Maybe
oh,
it is,
oh,
no,
no,
that's
no.
actually very live. It's a large
Oh,
tree.
then
But
I
happy to
misspoke.
see that the cherry trees are not threatened, especially the
Yeah.
big old one.
If I could just add, hi, this is
Yeah.
Jeremy Philo. Thank you, Dave, and hello, everybody. So we put this plan together. I'll just give you a quick synopsis. So we do call for one red spruce in the front. It's actually not doing great. It looks great on one side, and the back side has died away. So that's the only reason we note that one. If through this it lives, and we would be happy to keep it. We don't have any issue with the tree. And there is one tiny little spruce that's actually built on top of the leaching chambers that grew on top of it. That's, I think, right in the middle where the pool will be, that will have to come out as well. But that's it's a pretty small specimen. But otherwise, what we're proposing, like we really want to maintain the native natural feel for the property. So we're proposing all native specimens for the most part. Inkberry around the pool, a native display garden right in front of the house within the existing little fenced area with some subtle walking stones through there, arrowwood around the pool, so different species from the plant list. And then the lawn area that would be reestablished would be a Cape Cod native species of lawn, of grass seed, so, which is what's at the property now. We do not have irrigation. We don't plan on putting irrigation in for the lawn in any way. We would probably water it just to get the areas established, but no plans beyond that for the property.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fowler. Is anyone ready?
I have a couple of
All right.
quick questions. So David, the proposed patio, can you give me the size and the materials?
We lumped the areas in with the pool and the walkways in our calculations, so I can't give you,
Oh, okay, so it's not broken out
Um,
separately.
but as far as materials, I didn't specify anything. Jeremy,
Yeah, I call for a bluestone
blue
patio.
stone, okay, yeah, I see that
On
now.
there, and it's
Dry
a modest area. It's really connecting the door of the addition to the pool, so it's probably half the pool size.
Okay, and the pool itself has just a coping around it? There's no walkway
Correct.
or patio area surrounding it?
Only up to where that patio connects to it on the sort of spa side, the house side, I'll say. Otherwise, yeah, we want a minimal coping. We want the grass to finish right up to the pool edge, so it's kind of within as natural setting as possible.
Okay. And there's an auto cover, there's no fence that will
Correct.
shield or the patio and the pool from, it's a little unusual location because you've got it right adjacent to the front entrance of the house. So what I'm wondering is, are you thinking about putting any kind of screening there, whether it be a fence or vegetation?
The only vegetation no fence, and it is an unusual location. A lot of that comes from working with the setback lines that we wanted to work within for this. But the vegetation, so in the front on the Absegami Road side, we're proposing a very low retaining wall, which will be probably, we think will be necessary from just putting the pool in and extending that grade out a little bit. That'll be a stone wall, natural stone wall, and then it'll only be about 2 feet high, so very low in that hillside there. And then on top of that, we're proposing an inkberry hedgerow, which is shown by the circles there on the plan, and that's all we're proposing as far as screening for the pool.
Okay, so because there is quite a slope where this pool is
Yeah.
going to be going, do you need to bring in fill from outside, or will there be enough from the excavation of the pool to level that out and regrade that?
There'll be more than enough coming out of
Yeah.
the excavation.
Okay, so
yeah.
no external. I think that's it for me, thank you.
Thanks, Janet. Anyone else? Bob?
I got a couple questions. On the red spruce, never heard of a red spruce, but okay, if it's a red spruce. But anyway, I'd like to see that be retained, that large existing red spruce on the bank. I'd like to see that retained. It does provide some value. The small spruce that's coming out for the installation of the pool, could that be transplanted?
We could certainly try, whether it's possible or not would probably, I have a feeling it's kind of grown into possibly the chambers. It's right on top of that, so
Oh.
I don't know. I don't know what'll happen.
Okay.
But we're certainly happy to. We have no problem, and we can, and we will, and we're happy to keep that spruce. We can note it that way. We can we'll talk to an arborist and see if something can be done to improve its health.
You mean the existing red spruce?
The one the big one, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
And could you note on the plan that you're not going to be installing any new permanent irrigation?
We can.
Okay. I think that's all I had. That's all I had, thanks.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Anyone else over here? You're good? There's only one thing that I keep thinking about with this project, and that is, you were saying that no mitigation is required because, on one part, you're removing asphalt, and that's a no-brainer. That certainly reduces coverage. On the other part, though, significant part of it is removing pervious driveway. And we've actually had this conversation on previous projects with other applicants, whether that really, how does that count towards mitigation requirements? And I think last time we talked with, I think we even had an acknowledgement that maybe it doesn't count one for one. And I still don't know that it really counts one for one. But nevertheless, I'll leave that for my colleagues to express an opinion about it. But it's something that I'm conflicted on. So the beds that you are, Mr. Philo, you're putting in, looks like they'll be largely native plants, but this is not mitigation. This is just simply what you plan to do.
Yeah, I mean, yes. In
Okay.
that context, we want to do it, and to the extent that, it would mitigate, we would love to take advantage of that too, but no, this is what we're planning to do.
Right. Okay. I echo Bob's desire to keep the red spruce if you can. It looks like it's not 100% healthy for sure, but it is a very large tree that is providing some habitat value. And if it's not posing a hazard to your property or whatever, I would argue to keep it.
We'll do what we can. I have no problem with it. We put it on there only because our concern was that it wasn't going to make it. So
Yeah, it might. It might or might not.
We'll do what we can.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, good, I appreciate it. It could be a while, but you never can
Yep.
tell.
And we like snags too, so even if it does come down, leave it up partway, 10 or 15 feet, just as a snag.
That is true. That'd be a primo nesting spot for birds to drill holes into for nesting. You would enjoy watching them nest there over the years, if it turned out to be a big snag.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Oh, good. Anything else? Anybody? Any comments on my musings about removing pervious driveway and counting that as basically eliminating the need for mitigation? We've run into this before.
We do.
And we don't have any regulations, to your knowledge, that address it head-on, do we? So it's really just a matter of, because really what I'm seeing is that we're adding, before I say that, so you're not going to add a garage, but there is a garage.
yes.
So I couldn't quite,
There's an addition. Is that going to be a new garage? Is that?
A portion of it
Yeah.
is garage.
Yeah.
okay, so you will be adding a garage. That's why you can get rid of the access to the existing garage. Okay. I interrupted my own thought, so now I have a hard time remembering what I was going to say. Anyway, so my overall feeling is that it meets all the if you accept the fact that the driveway removal counts as removing mitigation, that it meets the requirements and so forth. But really what I'm struck with is that we're adding a fair amount of hardscape with no mitigation in essence. And that's the part where I'm struggling a little bit. But I don't know what to do about it.
It's nearly 2,500 square feet if you count the addition to the house, plus the pool and the patio. it comes up to almost 25.
Yeah,
926 and 14.
It's a lot of, it's a lot of hardscape. And I mean, I appreciate the fact that you're willingly adding native garden beds, but if, you know, we have no way of, if you will, enforcing that, and certainly any subsequent owner could do whatever they wanted to in those beds, et cetera. So I don't count that as a consideration when it comes to mitigation. So unless anybody wants to help me out on thinking this through, I guess we have to move on.
Well, I thought I heard Mr. Philo say that he wouldn't object if we considered that planting to be mitigation.
Yeah,
No,
maybe,
yeah. And I will also say this about the stone for, you know, an unofficial opinion on it. That stone is very thick. It's been added to. I can't even, I tried to like show my wife how this was going to stake out, and I couldn't even hammer a stake into it without like fully digging away the like 6 inches of compacted stone. That's probably, I can't even imagine how many times they've added to that and driven over there. I've got oil trucks that come in and so on and so forth. Like, you know, it may not be a 1-to-1 swap, but it's definitely not nearly as pervious as the native, you know, grass will be in that location. So to whatever extent that may help, I don't know, but it's definitely going to improve that area with that, in that respect.
yeah, okay, yeah, thank you for that. But just since you've opened up that conversation, what is your plan for getting rid of the stone? In other words, how far down are you extracting it?
I'm going to take it, I'm going to get rid of it completely.
All of it?
So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Oh, okay. And,
So that there's no issue with anything growing in that location.
right, and but you're basically putting fescue where that is now.
Correct.
Yeah, but you're getting rid of the stone, you're adding loam. Okay. That helps me, thank you.
Helps me too.
All right. Anything else from anybody?
If it means anything, as far as what we're removing, the asphalt, within the only place I break it out is in the riverfront area. Okay, I did separate calculations for that. So in the first 100 feet, the inner riparian zone, we're removing 763 square feet of asphalt. And there's a little bit more outside that zone. So I can get you that number. The total amount of asphalt, to separate it from the gravel driveway that's being
Yeah.
removed.
Okay. Right, well, it sounds like I'm the only one who's, yeah, I'm feeling a little better about the gravel. That's really what I was focused on, and I'm feeling better. So, without, Bob, you have something?
I have something very, very minor, David. On your plan, it says existing shell drive. It's actually a stone drive.
Thank you. I
Thank
will
you.
fix that.
All right. Are we waiting for anything here? I think just minor changes to the plans, including the fact that we want to see that red spruce, whatever that is, live. And what else anyway, you took notes, David, on the minor, fairly minor things we're asking for. So I think we're ready for order, good to go to order. Whatever day that would be, Nikki.
5th, getting fall.
October 5th again.
Okay.
This will be the 7th coming in.
But who's counting?
I move that we continue 62 Oyster Pond furlong to the work session on October 5th, 2022 for an order of conditions.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Bob.
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Elise,
Aye.
Cheryl,
Aye.
and I vote aye. All right, thank you.
Thank
Good
you
luck-
all.
Good luck.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, the next notice of intent is for 150 Goose Pond Road, James and Carolyn Eldridge, map 6G, parcel 14B. I did not see this listed on the state's SE number database, so that may need to be looked into. Construction of a single-family dwelling.
David Clark, Engineering. Joyce Williams is here today to speak to you of the landscape and mitigation plan. Just to go over the changes to the site plan, I added the trees that the commission asked for. I believe within the work area, there's 10 trees within the footprint of the house that are within your jurisdiction. There are a couple of more at the toe of the slope on the northeast corner of the project, but those are pine trees, and they could probably withstand a little, some fill. We could save them if we wanted to. So if we include those, that's 12 trees.
All right. So as I recall, last time we had a lot of questions for the mitigation plan, so Joyce, do you have a present? Oh, there you are. I thought you were here. You're actually physically here. Okay, good.
Good afternoon.
Good
Joyce
afternoon.
Williams, Landscape Design, and I apologize for not being able to be here last time to make your lives a little easier. Maybe answer some of those questions that hope that I can take care of today.
All right. Thank you. Do you have something prepared, or should we just start peppering you with questions?
I can go through what I already gave you. I do have an update, which I would like to give you as far as the narrative is concerned. The narrative did not address the 10 trees that are going to be removed inside the footprint of the dwelling. And I did not indicate that in my previous narrative. So I have prepared for you today, and I'll hand it out. And in a different color, I have just shown what is different about this from the other one. It's minimal, but
Okay, sure, yeah. Normally, we don't like to do this, you know, yeah, but we want to take advantage of the fact that you're here, and
it's all on the first page. And I just noted the change of date from the other one, and the fact, as I say, it all has to do with the number of trees that. Essentially, for the 10 trees that David mentioned, I already had those on the mitigation plan, so the mitigation plan has not changed from what I had. This is the only thing that I have made a change on. Plans is the same, the plant list is the same. And I have 11 trees on the plant list to accommodate the 10 trees that would be coming out for the dwelling.
yeah. Some of us are hampered by the fact that we didn't get, some of us are paper people, some of us are non-paper people, and the non-paper people didn't get the plant list, so I'm one of those people. Janet's one of those people. But,
I can give you 2 today. That would be
okay,
helpful.
that would actually be nice, yeah. And then we got, one of us took a picture of your plant list and emailed it to the rest of us, so let me.
I did review online the meeting from a couple of weeks ago, so hopefully I am prepared to answer your questions.
All right, so your plant list proposes planting 10,
11.
11 trees.
Yes,
trees.
Juniper virginiana.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can you start, Janet? Thank you.
Actually, once you give this to Ben, at least at the end, then I'll show it.
Right, thank you.
Okay. And in your plan, You don't, okay, so the plant, you're showing where those trees are going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 8, 9, okay, I get it now. So all the trees are going in basically
On
between.
that
between-
slope between
yeah,
the two buildings,
Between the two
yes.
buildings, right, okay. All right. So there was, so this is a bit complicated by the fact that there was a previous project, then it sort of expired unexpectedly, I guess, and we're picking up, you basically, it was resubmitted largely as the same project. So over in the garage area, there's currently a bunch of wood chipped areas when you go there. And on this plan, crosshatch, I guess, signifies that that's wood chip?
Yes,
And
as David had them on the site plan. Some of that wood chip area, to address the question that you'd asked last time, Mr. Chairman, I have that green bow tie, if you will, that's on the far east side there, does incorporate some of that wood chip area. But in reality, just to give you a sense of proportion, there is only 6 feet of space between the building and that garden area, and then 2 feet on the east side of the garden area, just enough to get around that planter. And there's been talk about maybe that planter would go, maybe it wouldn't go, but because it was there, and I think the first choice would be to have kept it, I kept it on the plan. So all of that, that's basically just, the wood chip area that you see there is just access around the building and to the stairs that go down to the path that goes to the water. So it looks larger in the scope on the plan than it actually is. And some of it, if you were to compare this side by side with David's site plan that shows that crosshatched area, you'd see it's been reduced somewhat in size.
Okay, was that the original mitigation plan? Well, I mean, you may not know, but well, I guess my basic question is why do we need wood chips, or why do we
Well,
want
I
wood
think
chips?
David mentioned yesterday that, or excuse me, yesterday's when I looked at it, I'm sorry, I've been out of town. He mentioned that at the last hearing, that was just to hold soil in place after the building was constructed until there was a landscape plan. Is that correct, David?
Until it was landscaped.
Until it was landscaped, yeah.
So it will be landscaped, or
The plan was, and my plan was to leave it as a wood chip area just for a walking access rather than create a lawn area there.
oh. Well, I suggest that either it be considered that become vegetated area rather than wood chips.
Yeah, it just, it's difficult to have woody plant material that you can walk through to access around the building, or to carry
Well,
something around the
The
building.
typical approach is to put a fescue seed mix.
I don't think would be a problem with that as far as the homeowners are concerned. I can't see that there should be,
Yeah, good.
and I
think that-
certainly don't have a problem with
I
that.
think that would be the environmentally better approach. Wood chips are environmentally a dead zone. They serve no
Yep.
ecological purpose whatsoever. Plus, then you have to weed it, and who wants to do that? So moving around to the house, you have 2 lawn areas in, well, I'll call it the non-driveway, the front side. That's what I call, I don't know what you call the front or the back, but anyway, side of the house, on the other side of the house from the driveway. There's an area of grub clearing and then lawn, and then there's another area of lawn.
Those lawn areas would be seeded with either a fescue mix. What I included, but you probably didn't get either, was a fact sheet
Quite get it, yeah.
on Colonial Seeds Harmony Mix, which is a almost mowless type lawn.
Oh, a modalist, okay, great.
And if you're using it as lawn, it does need to be mowed, but probably once a month, something like that, once it's established.
Yeah,
And this, as I mentioned on that same fact sheet about the paper, or excuse me, in the narrative, it says that there will be no permanent irrigation on the property
right.
in that area, out within your jurisdiction.
All right, so I'm going to stop hogging the mic for a moment here while I open it up to my colleagues. Anybody? You're on, Bob.
Joyce, I had a question about the foundation plants on the new building within the 100. What are those going to be? Do we have a plan?
I did not specify the plant material per se, but I would imagine that they would be mostly from the secondary list, from the Barnstable extension list, but certainly everything could come from that list. I could see inkberry holly, I could see hydrangea and that sort of thing. But I thought that the homeowners would prefer to make those decisions once they saw the house. Was not privy to a plan that showed where windows were, and so it didn't make sense to me to try to place specific plants, but I could add that to the plant list, or to be determined, and the fact that they would all come from the
Sure, yeah, maybe make a note of that,
approved
yes.
list. Be happy to do that.
You'd like to see some natives in there, you know?
So just to be clear, you're saying that the foundation plants will be native?
I would like to say that they'll be from the Barnstable County's approved list, which would include some non-native plants. As examples, hollies and hydrangeas that aren't native plants, but that have benefit to wildlife or are innocuous.
Does that list include non-natives? I think we may not be talking about the same list.
Yeah, that list has two sections. One is all natives, and then the second part are what they call the secondary plants, I think. And I would choose between, from both of those things that are all part of that same approved list.
Yeah, I think that's drawing a blank with some of this.
And we have a percentage?
Yeah, we have talked about in the past. Let me just try to get straight here on the resource areas. Your planning plan doesn't show or does it? It does. Yeah, there it is, I see it. Yeah.
It's all within the 50 to 100, so the secondary list is usually quite, in my experience, has been quite acceptable in that area.
What we sort of have been arriving at in the last year or two is within the outer R of the 50 to 100, a percentage of plants, foundation plants that would be native.
That's fine.
Yeah.
No problem with that at all. I could say we could easily do 50% or.
Yeah, we've been.
Some of us like 50, some of us like 75.
I can do more, but I'm just thinking that sounds like a nice happy medium.
But bear in mind that the entire front of the house, which would be a lot of ornamental foundation plants, is all outside of
Right,
jurisdiction.
right.
So you can do whatever they want there.
Yeah.
But 75% be, once
I have
you're
no
into
problem with
the-
that at all.
Great, okay.
We're writing that down,
Yeah, all of that.
all of us.
And are you okay with just that factual information versus
Yeah.
the plants?
Yeah, as long as they're chosen
Themselves.
from the
Yep,
approved
okay.
list.
All right. Anything else from Janet or from who was speaking? Bob? That's it. We're not having two, so, all right, so the things that we talked about with you, Joyce, I guess we don't have many questions for David. We covered those before. I would like to see the chips go away. I just don't see the point of that. And we've agreed on 75% natives in the non-driveway side of the house.
In the foundation, and
Yeah,
obviously everything
foundation
that's in the
plants.
colored areas would be native plant material.
Yes. Anything else from anybody? Well, that was simpler than I thought it was going to be. All right. I guess let's see, do we need anything different from you? I think it would be good in your plan if you could give us a version that indicates that the crosshatch is not there. Because, we look forward 3 years from now, the conservation agent goes out there and they're looking at that and they wouldn't know that it's not supposed to be there.
Okay, no problem.
And while you're at it, if you could just make a note on it to the effect of what we agreed to about the foundation plants.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, very often we ask for this type of plan to show where plants are going. You know, a lot of landscape design or landscape people will have different icons
You're looking for a
showing-
symbol for each
Yeah, a
each
symbol, different
specific
symbol for
plant.
each basically
Yeah,
species.
I mentioned in the narrative that what I wanted to do specifically in the restoration area was a matrix of plants, and they're smaller, finer plants, and it gets pretty difficult to put that.
It can,
On a-
but you know, where the larger plants are concerned, and of course, you yourself said that you don't have a architectural drawing of the front of the house, so you don't know exactly where you can put bigger plants, et cetera, so, anyway.
Right, okay, I'll note that for future reference.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That is really,
I did put the trees on here, for instance, because I felt that was important, but the others are sort of a mishmash of different things, and
and the whole point of it is so that the agent can have that in their hands when they're there, and they can get an idea whether it was done the way it was supposed to have been done. Otherwise, it's almost a wild guess.
okay, appreciate that.
All right. So are we still October 5th, or are we, have we moved on, Nikki?
Yeah, October 5th.
Nikki had mentioned that she hadn't got a SE number yet.
Oh, okay.
You won't get an
Right.
SE number. This is entirely local jurisdiction.
Oh, that's true, yeah. You're right.
Oh, okay.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I had that noted. Yep, so the 5th is our next work session.
Yeah. When is it full?
This would be the 8th going into it. I think that's enough.
Yeah, Janet thinks that after this one, even before or after this one, we're full.
You need to let them know.
I think so.
It's next week.
Means we're all considering that.
We're all gonna
That's
do
a
two.
week. I don't want to put it off any longer than necessary.
Yeah, we don't want to risk not having a plan ready for next,
Oh, okay, you're going to help us out here. All right.
Oh, good.
but we'd rather not get bumped all the way to December.
Okay.
November,
November.
November 2nd.
I can do
Well,
my.
November, I'm sorry, yes.
We're ready to give you
Yeah,
November.
Yeah.
You can have any date in November you want.
I'm ahead of myself for some reason. I'm usually way behind. So, yeah, I didn't want to get bumped to
Yeah, but you
November.
would be
I
amenable.
think I can do it, David. I think I
Well,
can, the more I
oh,
think about it.
Okay. Well, if you want to wait until November, we'd be happy with that. But if you have a need to be in October, we probably can,
Could we do it for a different meeting in October? Even though it's, I mean, we've been doing them different
I
times.
mean, put it in a work session or,
Well,
In a hearing.
non-work
Put it in a
session.
hearing.
Put it in a
or a
hearing.
hearing, I mean, yeah. I don't know, I kind of hate doing that. It's,
I'll
I
do
do
my
too,
best to
but-
get it for you. If it's at the work session, do you need it prior to the work session?
Yeah, we would need it
That's my-
by, like, the end of this week, because it's next week is the work session.
I've got so many commitments
Yeah.
between now and then.
Well,
you want to think about it for a
no,
while.
I just hate to go all the way to November for some minor changes.
It's making changes on the plan that are going to be the trickier part for me, but it's not impossible, I don't think.
Right,
Did
you're
you
not-
see
you're-
Joyce?
She's not a CAD person, I
Right.
can see, yeah, it's
Right.
hand-drawn, I understand.
Yeah, labor intensive. I mean, if there's any way we could go to the 12th, I don't know how many new filings you have. Probably Nikki hasn't had a chance to.
We had a deadline yesterday and we didn't get a lot. I think I only saw 2 maybe, so I don't think the 12th is crazy. So I think that would be fine.
We may need it for the other ones.
The 12th being a
Hearing date.
hearing date, yeah. Well, let's do that. It sounds like we're getting pretty full at the work session. So.
Yeah.
I'll move that we continue 150 Goose Pond Road to the hearing on October 12th, 2022 for an order of conditions.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Aaron.
Next one.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
The 5th.
And I vote aye.
I appreciate that accommodation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next notice of intent is 162 Shore Road, C. Piper Realty Trust, map 16D, parcel 1529, SE 103582, modification to an existing stone revetment, invasive plant species removal and management, replant with native species, or native varieties.
There we go. Thank you. I'm just plugging in a stick drive, see if I can find what I'm looking for. Well, I'm hoping to get this open. It's an Adobe, and I'm not sure why it's not opening, but we'll go on. You have these in the submittal. My name's Bob Perry, Cape Cod Engineering, working at 162 Shore Road. The C. Piper Realty Trust is the applicant, and I'm pleased to be working with Wilkinson Ecological Design. I know Katrin Higgins is in the wings on Zoom. Matt Lautenberger's also part of the team. He's in the room with us today. And I know that Tom Jennings, the owner, was interested in being on the call, but I'm not sure he had time since we've gone on a little bit. Just to bring you up to date, there's a shorefront site. We have Coastal Beach down on the east side. As you come landward, it transitions to what, by all appearances, is a dune deposit. Quite a bit of dredge material disposal occurred in the last 20 years, and it's kind of the source for a lot of that. We come up the coastal bank, and we have a very thick invasive community of, you name it. It's mostly porcelain berry, bittersweet, and I think Wilkinson would speak more to the remedy for that, and I'm going to get to it. And as we come up the bank further, we get into the open lawn area where the buildings are. The flood zone here transitions to elevation 22. We look across Chatham Harbor and we find that the barrier beach is diminishing. It doesn't seem to be building up in that area. There's some concern for the future. And just to give you the perspective, this applicant also owns 154 Shore, and several years ago undertook a project much like this. The interest is twofold, but in the practical side of it was to eradicate the invasive species in this area. But since that involves quite a bit of work and alteration, underlying that material, there's a buried stone revetment. I am personally familiar with the area. Back in the mid-90s, I did the design for the one at 154 and was working with other companies and owners in this reach of the shoreline. What resulted here was a rubble-style revetment, riprap, of kind of an unknown quality. And what happened at 154 is that that was revealed and reconstructed to some extent. We decided that the best time to get that work done is during the same time that the ground alteration would be done for the invasive remediation. And in doing that, and knowing that we are facing an elevation of the flood, which does get onto this property, and I can't tell you whether FEMA predicted that the barrier beach would wash out across from here, but it's probable that we'll have higher floodwaters more in line with the elevation 22 that affects this site. So there's a proposal to increase the cap of the revetment. And I would just perhaps scroll down so you can see The top of the revetment is approximately elevation 1415. We'd like to take it to 18.5. That upper segment would be visible. And I'm going to try to find some photographs here that we did submit that show you, the general outcome, where this area in front of the windmill is where we're working. That's a large Japanese knotweed. This all beach grass here, that's to be untouched. This is the invasive community, and our lot line's about right where the division is. This cluster of stone here is the likely appearance when we're finished. Because what we've noted, and I think Wilkinson could speak better to it, is that if you bury a revetment fully, you've sort of robbed that soil of moisture. So you're not going to have a lot of luck growing things immediately on top of the rocks. So the project that was implemented at 154 is fairly identical to the project at 162. We carry the work we're doing across the frontage, and we terminate the work area right here, about 3 feet from the adjoining lot line. Rather than use boulders, the revetment can actually be finished with rectangular granite pieces so that it has a uniform line. The invasives remediation would occur right up to the lot line, and then the replanting, of course, that Wilkinson's plan will show you. Through the middle, where we've set the grading so that should there ever be overtopping water from spray, wind-driven water or otherwise, that water will not run to the side, it will run toward the center and then come back to the system running easterly through the center. Through the center also is proposed a set of stone steps. The applicant may not own all this property to the south forever, so they felt that it was prudent to, if we're going to be doing this rock work, to set in place stone slab steps, very similar to the ones that were set. They're not cut, they're feather wedged, very rounded but usable, functional stone slab steps in the same location that the stairs are today. Construction access for this project comes through the upland, where we don't show you the driveway because it's way up off the page, but we come through, avoiding the septic system, passing down through here between the house and the windmill to where we get to the top of the slope. So all of the work would be done from the top. We've talked to Ken McIntyre about this. I think it's fair to say we have the team assembled. Cape Cod Engineering is doing the engineering work. Wilkinson Ecological Design is already effectively evaluated everything they need to do, and the contractor has been brought in earlier to discuss some of the logistics. They did the work next door, so they're familiar with it, and we did put this in a written work protocol for you to review. So that's the sort of a large-scale work, which is really just working at the top of the revetment, but down to about elevation 9. And unlike today, when the job is completed, an appearance will exist where we will see granite stones, perhaps the upper 5 or 6 feet of the revetment, which will effectively match the property next door. Now, I know Katrin's here, and I'd like to turn it over to Wilkinson Ecological Design for a discussion about what they need to do. I could go into it, but I'd rather she do that. So, Caitlin, if you're there, thank you.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Hello, okay. Hi, everyone. Katrine Higgins from Wilkinson. As Bob indicated, the project area is heavily degraded with state-listed invasive and non-native species, including the porcelain berry that he mentioned, also Asiatic bittersweet, shrub honeysuckle, and Rosa rugosa and English ivy really blankets the ground layer. When you look at the thicket on the top of the bank, there's really few existing native species remaining there because the invasives had taken over. Though there is a nice cluster of bayberry in the middle of the area that hasn't yet been enveloped by the porcelain berry. And then as Bob was describing, as you continue seaward of this, closer to the water, there are more native species, including a dense area of American beach grass and goldenrod. But 2 stands of knotweed also exist in the area, which are shown on our restoration plan. So we're proposing to remove the invasives and non-native species, particularly within that thicket above the coastal bank. We would do this work by hand and using low impact, low ground pressure equipment where we have the access from the lawn area and from the driveway. Following the proposed rebuilding of the revetment, we would install erosion control blanketing anywhere that was sloped and needed a little bit more stability. And we would treat the knotweed in the late summer, as is the best time of year to do that work. And as you can see on our restoration plan, we're proposing to plant grasses throughout the area, especially above the bank where it'll need more vegetation than compared to lower in the dune area. So we're proposing to plant 12 inches on center with beach grass and little blue stem grasses. This is how we approached the property adjacent, number 154, and the planting really came in well there, the beach grass and the little blue stem. We would add any areas that needed more vegetation on the seaward side of the bank. We would add American beach grass where needed. And then in addition, as shown on our restoration plan, we're proposing about 50 shrubs, just over 50 shrubs, including arrowwood, beach plum, sweet fern, and Carolina rose. You'll also notice on our plan, we're proposing a privacy screening fence along a section of the northern property line. This is a neighborly effort to maintain privacy for the area. And as our note indicates, we would like the fence to be to provide an 18 inches of clearance under the fence to allow a really nice area for wildlife to access. And the fence, to a certain extent, the fence would also help block any invasive vegetation from creeping back into the project area over time. As I mentioned, this work is consistent with what was approved and successfully implemented on the adjacent property on 154 Shore Road. And it will provide significant improvements to stormwater management and wildlife habitat, in particular for the resource area. Currently, there's 4 state-listed invasive species within this relatively small project area, and that includes 3 on the Massachusetts prohibited plant list. So they're really aggressive in nature plants, and it'd be great to remove them and plant native plants instead. And really, when you look at, in particular, the knotweed and the porcelain berry, if nothing's done, they'll just continue to keep on creeping in and taking over other areas of the dune. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Katrine. Yeah, I have, let me start out with a couple of things. I actually went to the site visit before I had access to the files, and I was surprised when I came back and got the files that there was a revetment there. I didn't know there was one there, which made the, yeah, so anyway, yeah, it's buried under sand and invasive. My question is actually more for you, Bob, at the moment. I couldn't quite figure out from your plan, but I think you said that the existing revetment is somewhere between 14 and 15 feet high.
Wow.
When it was constructed, that area down where you see those 2 knotweeds was actually a wet sandbar intertidal zone. And I think it's just the changes that have occurred over the last 30 years that allowed some of this to appear more like a dune. The revetment toe is somewhere around 0, and I've probed. I had the very same impression you had, even though I'd been there in the 90s. But the revetment's there. We probed to find the stones. There's really, in some locations, only a foot of sand on them at the top. So we were able to get an approximate elevation that's undulating. So we're depends on where you are, but I think it's a rubble pile of stone. There may be filter fabric in there. We believe there is. And it's approximately 14.
Okay. And you're proposing to raise it to 18.5?
18.5, the one that's to the south is a little higher, but the trend is to kind of drop the elevation as we go. But yeah, it's a 3 or 4 foot increase in total for when it is completed, right?
And I noted in your alternatives analysis that one of the alternatives that you discussed was raising it higher than that, I
Well,
think.
the flood elevation on the property is 22, but not all the property. But there's a general understanding that the water elevations, total water elevations, don't drop 7 feet with a line. So the general sense, in my experience, is that a stone formation, seawall, CES, doesn't always have to match the 100-year flood elevation. And the great part about this project, with the appropriate vegetation coming in, with native vegetation, unlike some of the glade-creating vegetation like knotweed or shade varieties of bittersweet, with an herbaceous growth, and I know Caitlin will speak more to this, but we can tolerate some overtopping. So we put in our alternatives analysis a revetment below the 100-year flood, and I believe we compared that with a revetment to the 100-year flood. And we're satisfied with one that's 3 feet to 4 feet below, because we can take care of the upper level with vegetation. And we're
Okay.
confident about that.
Oh, good. All right. So I asked because we have other applications where we're wrestling with this issue. So I'm just interested in
there's-
hearing your thought
Well,
process on it.
this would stick out like a sore thumb at 22, and I know there's trains of thought where you want to be extra careful, and we're being careful. But we also, we have a land slope above our revetment, which is more amenable to overtopping.
That is true, yeah. Every case is a little different, and yes, that is true here. All right. I think that's really, I don't have any more at the moment.
Okay. Hi, Bob. So we don't know exactly what the condition of the revetment is because it's covered with vegetation and it's not knowable until it's removed. What is the thought or the planning for the spectrum of possibilities? I mean, you described it as riprap and it's on dry land, which to me means it could be pretty unstable once the vegetation is removed. The project's described as a repair. Is it fair to say that there's another point on the spectrum where you're going to have to reconstruct essentially most of this revetment?
I doubt it, and I'll tell you why. In I'm not going to get the year right, but it was 93, 4 or so, I was working at 154, and I came up with a revetment design that was not built to that design. It was built straight through by another supervising company and another contractor. And the two walls were built at the same time, and they are by the same person. And the project that went forward at number 154 will likely mirror this one. And so while in our application we caution that there may be removal of more face stones, there's no interest here in taking out, for example, toe stones or stones below elevation 9. And 9 is just about where the land breaks. And in speaking with Ken, they managed to inspect the circumstances as they proceeded at 154. And in my evaluation, I don't see any reason why it would be any different. And so that's the model for where we're going. Of course, with a remodeling job, sometimes you really do find something that's problematic. We're not expecting to do that, really not. And I'm sincere when I say that because of the similarities between the two sites. But if we found a problem that needed some kind of remedial work, we'd let you know. Like if we had to go down deeper, if there wasn't any filter fabric, for example, but that's just so unlikely. It's just so unlikely because these were built at the same time by the same company.
Okay. So, but it's still hard to project. I mean,
Yes.
I get you, that the experience at 154 is likely to tell you what you're going to encounter. So at the moment, unless there's something unexpected or some difference, you're not planning on replacing anything below elevation 9.
Right.
And between 9 and 12, you'll repair as needed?
Right, and the fabric would be overlapped and taken up to 18.5. In the location of the stairs, they will have to go deeper, but right in the center. And it's very limited, but in order to do the steps, there's a foundation that needs to be set, of stone.
And then in that last section, up to 18.5, you have to add, there's no stones there now, correct?
Correct.
So you'll be bringing in the stones to do...
I think it's possible that some of the stones that are encountered would be removed because they're sort of an irregular, possible, we just don't know, but if it's what I think it is, they're not stable, they're rounded, and yet there's quite a bit that was done at a time when this shoreline was receiving regular tidal energy.
Mm-hmm.
So since it was a dredge material that buried it, but that has isolated it for all these years, so I doubt there's any reason to worry too much about the depth.
Okay. Do you know offhand what the existing slope of the revetment is?
Probably between 1.5 to 1 and 2 to 1, but I'm hopeful that it's 1.5 to 1.
And that's what you would expect to continue that same
We
slope
would come
in that
up-
upper section?
Right, we don't want to take up any more land area than necessary, and the standard for this location would be 1.5 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
And in checking the probe depth, you can't get stones, you can't feel them below a certain depth, but the design plan called for 1.5 to 1 at the
Okay,
time.
so would've been- And did the existing permit that was issued, did it have any nourishment requirements? Now, I understand that the
It did.
disposal of the dredge
It-
would have ameliorated a lot of
It
that.
obviated that entirely, and I believe it was reflected in the certificate of compliance. But initially, there was nourishment requirement, and then it just, I don't know how many thousands and thousands of cubic yards of dredge material was placed here, but it completely offset that.
Right, but not having a crystal ball, it's possible that, what was deposited will eventually be taken away. What would you suggest to be an appropriate trigger point to start nourishment again once this is completed?
Well, since the nourishment requirement would typically be related to the landform donating soil as if it were not revetted, I would have to say when there was a tidal beach encountering the revetment. That would be obvious to see. And it would be, my opinion anyway, I suppose a storm could override it, but that's going to be claiming all of this other material. It's very difficult. A point in time, perhaps, would be when you have a tidal beach there, and the applicant owner may be concerned about the stability of the feature then.
Mhm. It's hard to, okay,
It's a
thank you.
good
That's-
question,
We have to
but tough
wrestle
one.
with that a little bit, and I think it'll help when we see the order of conditions that was issued for 154. Will help us with that. Thank you, that's all I have at the
sure.
moment.
I got a question for you, Bob. The path that will be through the new planted area,
Yeah?
what do you think about putting stepping stones there to limit the erosion?
I don't think there'd be an objection to that. And if it was just a mowed path, it's not that steep, and it may not be needed, but no objection to that. Stepping stones are practical, and I don't think the owner would be objecting to
There's
that.
just a little bit of erosion there now, but not
Right.
much.
Yeah,
But I think that would help, long-term. And I have some questions for Katrine.
Sure.
Now, the invasives, you're only going to remove the invasives on the top area, correct?
On the top area, that's where the majority of the invasives are. And then we would remove the knotweed that's in seaward. Yes, exactly. And then any, if there was a little bittersweet popping up here and there in that white area between the knotweed and our project area, we would like to remove anything within there. It's not, there wouldn't be a lot in there because it's primarily beach grass and goldenrod and other native species, but we definitely would like to remove any invasive or non-native species we found within there.
Okay, could we make a note of that?
Of course.
And that would be wonderful to eradicate anything that's in there so it doesn't spread into the new area, the newly planted area.
Agreed.
And is there going to be demarcation between the lawn and the newly planted area?
We didn't get to that level of detail yet, but, we certainly would be, we haven't talked to the applicant about what that might look like, but we definitely would be open to, being able to work with them and decide what made sense aesthetically for the applicant. But yes, that makes sense to have some sort of demarcation.
And then you mentioned the new revetment extension would have beach grass and little blue stem planted within.
So we
After
would
it's,
be planting, if you see, there's a note on our plan that says, following invasive plant management project area to be plugged with American beach grass and little blue stem in areas of bare soil and planted with the following shrubs. So that would be in the green project area, and then as needed, seaward of that, closer to where the knotweed, for example, where the knotweed would.
oh, I see, okay. So
There's another note there.
so the new extension will not have anything planted within it, correct? It would just be just the boulders, and that would be it.
Correct.
Okay. And Bob, there's no way to plant within that?
well, there's windblown material that will get in there. This is a photograph, which I'm not able to expand on it, but unlikely that in this upper stone area, there will be a lot of growth, but you do find coastal weeds, goldenrod, and things like that sometimes find themselves a home, but it's not intended.
Okay. I think that's all I had. And just one other thing, Katrine, on the north side of the newly planted area along the property line, there's some privet there existing now. Will that, are there any invasives that will grow and spread into the new area, newly planted area?
There's privet within our project area.
There's privet along that property line. I'm not sure exactly where it falls, on which property, but, on the north end.
So if it was on this property, we would probably remove it and it would be replaced with the arrowwood and the beach plum that is shown on our plan.
Okay. And I know you want to put a fence there too, as well,
Right.
correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Nope. So, don't sense any critical objections to elements of the project. To the height of the revetment, this is something we're struggling with. I think in this particular case, it seems to be, yeah, it's probably as low as you can go to get as high as you need. I don't know exactly how to say that, but that's one way of saying it. And which is good. That's what we're looking for in revetment, so I'm not having an issue with what you're proposing. We'll wind up with a nice vegetative buffer at the top of it. And sounds like a good project to me. So with, we're just looking for a couple of, I don't know, are we looking for any changes, any notation changes? I don't remember at this point. I don't think that we are. Bob is asking for a couple of things. The stepping stones in the path, the fact that all the invasives on the revetment will be removed, demarcation between the lawn and the mitigation. If Katrine, you can make notes on the plan. We don't have to wait for it, but if you can make those notes, it'll make it easier for us. And then other than that, when, Nikki, are we looking to, or when are you all looking to?
I know that the vegetation will be in stages. There's going to be a removal event, then the stonework would occur. I think it's fair to say not before late fall, but planting will occur in the spring or late winter. So I don't know what your schedule is. We would be willing to come back. If you need anything, we can bring it as soon as you want to have us back, because we don't have, from what I can tell, any changes to make.
No, I'm just asking, I guess really it was kind of a joint question for Nikki and you. Which work session should we schedule this for? We just discussed a while ago that the next one seems to be approaching capacity.
We can go one over, if you
Can
like.
you? Okay.
I think,
that would be November 2nd.
Katrin, you okay with that?
Sure, we can work as quick, as soon as, from our perspective, the sooner the better.
Well,
that works.
Nikki was suggesting, what was it, November 2nd? Was that okay with you?
Sure.
To be cooperative, because I think we can do that, yes.
Appreciate your cooperativeness. All right, thank you.
Very much.
All right.
I'll move that we continue 162 Shore Road to the work session on November 2nd, 2022 for an order of conditions.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Lise.
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
I vote aye. Thank you, Bob. Thank you both.
Thank you
Thank you
for
very
your
much.
time.
And I propose a break of about 6 minutes, 7 minutes? I don't know.
3:10.
Yeah, 3:10. Yeah. All right, we're good. Are you back? Are you with us, Nikki? No. I'll go ahead and, I think I know where we are.
Yes, I'm here.
There you go, okay. So I believe next up is 144 Chat Harbor.
All right, 144 Chat Harbor Lane, RNS nominee trust map 5B parcel 110 SE 103568, proposed removal and reconstruction of a single-family home and associated site improvements.
Good afternoon. For the record, this is Jen Crawford here on behalf of the applicant. At the last continued hearing, I had submitted a letter to you guys that didn't quite make it to you for whatever reasons. So I will go over that because it addressed questions from the initial hearing that we had. During the initial hearing, there was a question as to whether 3 small cedar trees adjacent to the southwest side of the dwelling were within the limit of work and if they were proposed for removal or not. And the answer to that was yes, those 3 small cedars are within the limit of work. They were the ones that had a lot of damage from wind and salt spray because they're right on the water side. They were not flagged in the field when you reviewed it because they were under 5-inch DVH. We only flagged things that were over that size, but they are included in the limit of work and will be removed as a part of the project. The other item that was asked for on our end was a clarification on the 2 very small lawn panels on the water side of the house, what they would be seeded with. So we had responded in our letter that they would be seeded with a native drought-tolerant fescue mix. And we have submitted a plan revision showing that seed mix on it for you for your records. And as in terms of Crawford Land Management, I believe that those were the items that needed to be addressed from the initial hearing. I know that Coastal Engineering also submitted a supplemental letter because there was a question in terms of the existing condition of the revetment and bulkhead on the property, and I believe that they found it to be in good health or good shape, for lack of a better term, but that letter was submitted for your review, and as far as I know, those were the only outstanding items that the commission had raised at either of the first 2 hearings. So that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Jen. So we had, I believe, a lot of letters from abutters since the last hearing. Nikki, can you summarize how many were received that are basically new to us?
Let me just grab this file.
Trying to figure out whether or not we can summarize them, or do we need to read them each?
So we had a new one, excuse me, sorry, on September 22nd, and that was the one that had a lot of the pictures attached. We had one on September 26th from Stephen Wardle and Barbara Knowlton. All of these are available on MyTownGov, so I don't necessarily feel the need to read all of them.
Well, there was a case where a couple of them were posted in message format. And I converted them to PDFs, found a way, put them in on Dropbox, but I can't upload to MyTownGov. So not all of them may be available for public consumption. But I think they are, except for the ones that were received and were uploaded in .msg format. That's an Outlook format, which you can't read unless you have Outlook. So, Nikki, if it's necessary, the PDF versions, I label them as from Wardle and Knowlton. I think there were 2 of them. Those could be put on MyTownGov if necessary.
Yeah, I think Crystal had done most of them on MyTownGov.
Yeah, she did, but there were, as I say, a couple there that are essentially an unreadable format.
Oh, okay.
But those I converted and put in Dropbox. So what I propose is that I went through them all. First of all, Jen and your team, have you looked at them? Or do you have access to them? Have you seen them? Do you have your reactions to them, comments, or whatever?
So I believe that Sean and I reviewed 2 letters that were written and submitted, as well as 2 emails. I don't think that I have seen a copy of the one from the 26th, and I'm not sure about the one that was referenced before then.
Okay. Yeah, you probably should take a look at MyTownGov. There's a fair number there. I just don't know what you've seen and what you haven't seen.
Yes, so this is Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering.
Hello, Sean.
As far as the ones we have seen, I think we have addressed a number of the issues that were in those letters at the previous hearings. One of them was their question about the septic. The septic isn't part of this application. We've already have an order of conditions for the reconstruction of the septic system. The other concern was over the culvert. And as discussed at the previous meeting in our construction protocol, we have called out a steel plate and monitoring of that culvert. There was mention of a crack in the culvert. We did a thorough closed-circuit TV inspection, and I'd be glad to share the video from that inspection with anybody that would like to see it. There was no visible damage or cracking on the inside walls of the pipe. There was no obvious separation of the bells or the connections of the pipe. And generally, it was in pretty good condition for its age. And we're providing steel plates for any of the traffic that's going over the culvert during construction. The culvert is actually not on the Locust property that we're here before you. It's actually on the neighboring property, which this property has rights over. So we don't have any right we have rights to use the road. And there was discussion about the pipe being all silted up. We'd be glad to get with the abutters if they'd like to move forward with a permit to have that pipe cleaned out. There's a lot of plaque buildup from the crustaceans growing on the inside of the pipe, and we'd be happy to have them permit this to clean it out if they have concerns about its usefulness.
No, thanks, Sean. I remember there have been a couple of previous projects substantially different from this one that were proposed for this site. And I think in the last one, there were contingency plans for if failure occurred in the pipe to repair it. And is that something, I can't remember at this point whether you had such in your current proposal, in this current proposal.
Yeah, the pipe is down probably 4 or 5 feet. We hadn't anticipated. This is a very common construction practice to put plating over pipes. You've probably driven over them many, many times in roadways where they're doing trenching. So we really don't anticipate any issues, but if you'd like, we can submit something, a construction protocol for that if you deem it necessary, but we just really don't even feel that would be a potential issue.
Right. Based on some of the comments that we've received, I think that would go some way towards alleviating some concerns of some of the abutters if you at least had a plan for what you would do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that would be wise.
Sure.
And welcome. So what I could do is sort of go through some of what I consider to be the salient comments that we have received and summarize them. Or I also remember at one point there was a representative for the abutters. I don't know if that's still the case.
He's here. Yep.
Sorry. Oh, you look, yes, Lou. Are you representing the abutters as a group? Oh, I'm sorry.
You need to
Come to the microphone then, because we're getting waved at by the
You can't
guys
speak from
behind
where
you.
you are.
Why don't you go ahead and step up to the microphone since I'm asking you questions?
While he's doing that, because I know that he's going to address the question of and that's for Jen, the Phragmites on the dune. But while Sean is sitting here, and I see him in front of me, a couple of the comments I saw were questioning again the location of the new house. And it was expressed as being substantially larger than the existing, and I went back and found in the narrative there was a statement that the footprint will only be about the size of the current house and deck. Is there a comparison between the footprints of the existing and the proposed?
Yes, I can look that up. I have that on my ZBA plan. You'll just have to give me a few minutes.
Okay, that's not a problem.
All right, Mr. Hyde.
While Sean is looking that up, I can address the comment that was made in the one abutter letter for the Phragmites, if you want.
Sure, I think that's why Mr. Hyde is here too. Go ahead.
All right, so at least in the letter that I have, the comment about the Phragmites was that it was preventing erosion and introduction of beach or sand into the marsh, and that the thought from this particular abutter was that the Phragmites should remain in place, but they should be controlled so they don't spread. So I think that in terms of preventing erosion with our Phragmites management protocol, there's no soil disturbance that's proposed. The root system of the Phragmites would be what would be aiding and preventing any erosion, and that root system is proposed to stay in place as it is. For this particular area of Phragmites, there is also American beach grass, which is a pretty rapidly colonizing species, as you know, as well as a smattering of native shrubs growing in the area. So even with the Phragmites management, I don't believe that there will be any adverse effect or any more potential erosion issues caused by managing the Phragmite stalks, essentially, because again, the root system will be remaining in place, and there's also a number of additional beach grass plugs as well as native shrub plugs that will be going into the area to supplement what's already there. So I think in terms of the abutter's concern for preventing erosion, I think there is no concern with that, with the management protocol that we put forth. And in terms of controlling them so they don't spread, they would be controlled on this property, and they would be held at bay at the property line as the Phragmites stand goes onto the neighboring properties. And so from that standpoint, I think that that's sufficiently answered.
Oh, well, let me ask you then, Jen, I guess maybe I was confused about what your management protocol consisted of. So you're saying, what does it consist of if the root system remains intact?
So the root system eventually will decay because it will no longer be viable in terms of alive. But there is no soil disturbance, and there is no proposal to rip the roots out of the ground. So while the Phragmites roots are decaying because we're going to kill them, the native grasses and the beach grass will be able to recolonize without the Phragmites taking up that niche where it's growing, as well as all the supplemental plantings that we're going to put in. Those root systems are going to overlap. As one starts going away, others are going to be building and developing. So I don't think there's going to be any adverse effects.
I love you.
Okay, yeah, all right, thank you for the clarification. Mr. Hyde, since you're
hi.
standing there, what you...
Lou Hyde, 25 Chat Harbor Lane. And as I'm trying to learn about this stuff and done a lot of research and reading on it, I will mention that I realize what a difficult, challenging, and great job that you guys do. It's impressive. I disagree with comments here, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So protection, most of this really comes down to not just today, but going forward with climate change and sea level rise. That's our problem. And protection of the marsh is crucial to protecting us and our homes. Now, we sent those pictures that everybody get all the pictures, that the basic idea was in '84, you saw what it looked like. And then somewhere between 12 and 15 or so, we had where the berm had been leveled. There was whitecaps in the marsh. We sent some pictures back in 20 to you on those. But just to show you the change, and then the most recent where the Phragmites have come up after the town renourished the beach and the berm in '21, and it's done a nice job. If I can, so I don't know if there's any questions. Did everybody see the Google Map pictures that we sent? There was '07, 2010, and 2021. Did they get through? Because we handed them in, we couldn't send them by email.
I'm not sure we saw those. So.
Okay, but basically what they showed was, it was actually very good in terms of seeing what it was back in '07, some of the changes, and that not only when the berms were flattened and the storm surges were coming in, not only that happened into the marsh, but the beach encroached into the marsh. So that's what those pictures, I think, do a pretty good job showing that. So when I saw their plan, I looked at it and I said, there's no way that that's going to be anywhere near as effective as the Phragmites. And I'll get into, what's going on with the Phragmites. But part of that is not only to protect the berm, protecting the marsh, but also encroaching of the beach into the marsh. And since the Phragmites has grown up, the marsh, the grasses have taken over some of what had become the beach. So I think that's part of the issue. Just some quick bullets on the Phragmites. And we've explained it, I think, in stuff that we sent, and the letter I sent the last time talked about references and who the researchers were and all. But the recent research, bottom line, has documented that there are ecological benefits to sometimes, not always, but sometimes in certain circumstances, leaving Phragmites in place. The fast growth makes it useful for holding soil, protecting eroding shorelines, which is what we're dealing with. The litter that accumulates within the root system contributes to accretion of the soil and elevation, making them more resilient to high tides, and helps maintain wetlands where native grasses can't keep up. So they're going to destroy, they're going to kill the Phragmites. I don't see the logic of it. Where the native grass can't keep up with the sea level rise. Removal of Phragmites can destabilize sediments and result in marsh loss. There have been situations where control of the Phragmites has resulted in additional shoreline erosion and loss of marsh. As a larger plant with deeper roots, Phragmites takes up 2 to 3 times as much carbon as native grasses, and they take up more nutrients, specifically nitrogen and phosphorus and toxins. So there's benefits to it. On the berm, they are basically, I'm confident, they're a much superior option to protecting the marsh than the proposed plan. When they put up the plan, I just looked at it and just said, there's no way that's going to be able to do the job that the Phragmites could do. And again, going forward, sea level rise, the climate change, and what's going to happen. I think that's the big thing. A couple other quick things if I could. The only reason, I hope I don't offend anybody by mentioning this, because I'm sure you know it, but the reason I mentioned it, when Ted Keon mentioned a few weeks ago that the town, he could not guarantee in perpetuity that the town would be able to do the nourishment, but I talked to him last week. He was optimistic. But I think that I'm sure that wording, if you were to decide to put any conditions on it, just wording that if the town is willing and able to do renourishment, that the owners say, okay, they allow it. One other issue, the Phragmites on the marsh, I think the science is behind us that's going to be much better to protect the marsh. There is another group of part of the Phragmites deeper into the marsh, in the southwest part of the marsh, northwest part of their property. And we're not saying keep that, we don't know. But the bottom line is many of the studies show millions of dollars have been spent getting rid of them without much proof that it really helped the marshes. So some of the authors I read conclude that it's not worth all the effort. But even if, so the decision would be based on what's best for the marsh. So if it's best for the marsh to get rid of them, get rid of them. And if it's not, then don't. But if the decision is to get rid of them, brings up the issue of glyphosate. So the our EPA says it's safe to use as directed. The CDC say the majority of children in the United States have glyphosate in their body, in their blood. They didn't just say, but the kids have the glyphosate within them, the majority of kids. The World Health Organization categorizes glyphosate as probable human carcinogen, and the Germans, for example, plan to ban it in 2024. So if they are going to remove it, that's fine based on what's best for the marsh. But we ask that they don't use the glyphosate. And then a little, please protect, I'm sure you do this, so please protect as many trees as you can. It stabilizes the whole property. And I was thinking, it seems, I think it's a very logical thing and reasonable that we're asking about, at least that Phragmites up on the berm. So we're asking your help on this. But the more I think of it, to be honest, again, with the climate change, I really hadn't thought about it this much, but just the last couple of days. The climate change and the sea level rise, we're really very, very worried. We're scared about the potential damage that any development would cause. So we're just hoping that, be honest, asking and, to be honest, pleading that you could do as much as you can. We understand, but do as much as you can to try to minimize damage to the marsh and to us and our homes. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hyde. Yeah, believe me, our goal is to do the best job we can do within the authority of the Wetlands Protection Act, which is sometimes not apparent to those who aren't on the commission. Jen, do you have any thoughts on Mr. Hyde's central point, which I interpret to be that Phragmites would do a better job than any other remediation you might be able to put in terms of protecting the marsh from being invaded by the ocean, or basically damaged and killed off?
I believe that with all of the data that has been collected over the last couple of decades regarding native plants that are adapted to our climates and soils versus foreign invaders, I'm not going to say that they don't have some value and maybe more value in other circumstances, in one circumstance over another. But what I can tell you is that American beachgrass also colonizes rapidly. That's one of the reasons why it's used on all of our shorelines, and typically is a part of living shoreline systems. I can also tell you that salt marsh is one of the most highly protected resource areas in the state of Massachusetts, and it also acts as a carbon and nutrient sink for all of that, all upland drainage. And I don't see why managing Phragmites when there is a healthy native plant community established there poses any adverse effect whatsoever. I also have had evidence with our company alone where we've managed we've managed Phragmites growing in salt marsh where there was no salt marsh remaining, at least no species existing within the Phragmites stand, and within 2 years, that salt marsh regenerated on its own. To cover, I would say, 80 to 90% of the area within 2 years with no additional planting whatsoever. And so I think that, all the information presented, I think that it's valid information. It's valid information within the circumstance that it was studied and it was written and it was presented. But I believe in this particular case that there is a huge advantage to managing the Phragmites, because not only is it taking over salt marsh area, but it's also taking over niches that are occupied by maritime shrubland. Maritime shrubland is a very, very high value wildlife habitat to migratory bird populations, versus Phragmites does nothing for migratory bird populations in terms of forage for those populations. So I think that there are multifaceted ways to look at this issue. And I think that there are, there are other things to consider here other than just simply the salt marsh or the dune. There's a web of life interconnected with all of this, which is why it's ecology. So in my professional opinion, I believe that managing the Phragmites in this area is absolutely advantageous to the salt marsh, is advantageous to the dune system, is advantageous to protecting wildlife habitat, is advantageous to protecting from floodwaters, and that's my professional opinion.
All right, well, thank you. Just to dig a little deeper, would you characterize the root systems of the material that you would put in as being as able as Phragmites root systems to protect that dune from storm action?
These species, for instance, American beachgrass, the abutter, I'm apologizing, I'm forgetting your name, had mentioned, thank you, had mentioned, Phragmites can help with accretion, so can American beachgrass. That's what it does. American beachgrass is planted so that it can help accrete sand, as well as American beach plum and bayberry. Those are all dune species that are used to being buried by sand, windblown sand, and are perfectly adept and adaptable to those site conditions. They're not, I would say they're more adaptable than Phragmites to a certain extent if we're talking about in a more upland system. So yeah, I think that those root systems and the way that those plants have evolved over time to work within these systems and to work within the areas where they're already growing. Clearly they're meant to be there. And I think that they're better from a wildlife habitat perspective, certainly. And they're also, I believe, just as adept, if not better, at being able to hold those soils in place.
Okay, all right. So that's one issue, and of course, I would say it's a big ask to ask a conservation commission in general, on average, to say, let's just not remediate the Phragmites. It's a reflex on our part. It's part of what we do, which is to try to put in natives where you have an invasive, very aggressive species like Phragmites. But I do understand, Mr. Hyde, and I appreciate the research that you put before us that makes the case that perhaps that's a reflex that needs to be examined, and it has been a food for thought. But from my own perspective, if the vegetation that's being put in can do as good of a job, I'm not sure that it doesn't make sense to me to get rid of it. But that is the crux, and I don't have a way of knowing that for a fact. Jen just gave her professional opinion, and sounds like Janet maybe have some.
Well, I have a question
well.
for Jen. Is there a timing risk? How long does it take for the American beachgrass root systems to reach the same degree of, to be able to hold the berm in place as the Phragmites is currently doing? I understand that Phragmites will deteriorate while the beachgrass, but is there a period of time when the berm will be inadequately protected as we're transitioning from one to the other?
That's a really great question. It's hard to answer in terms of, the Phragmites roots will disappear at X number of months and the beach grass will take over. But what I can tell you is there's existing beach grass that is already growing there. I wish I would have shown you a picture. I took pictures of it. You can clearly see the runners of the beach grass and how far they've extended in one season. And it's multiple feet. I didn't measure, but it's multiple feet. And you can see that the beach grass has nodes every few inches where new things are colonizing. So because there's already an existing beach grass colony there, that already has a root system in place that is going to look at the absence of Phragmites, the absence of the shade condition that Phragmites provides as a way for the beach grass colony to be able to expand into. It's naturally going to want to do that anyway. So with that system already in place, basically set to go as soon as the conditions are right for it, in addition with beach grass that we would be planning to put in during the dormant season, I would say that even within that the first growing season where the Phragmites is absent, I would say that there would be a pretty decent chance that the beach grass would start actively establishing as well as expanding from those bare root culms that we put in. I can't give you a number in terms of it's going to expand approximately 6 inches the first season or anything like that, but our plan does call for putting those beach root culms in at 12 inches on center spacing, I believe. So at the very least, you would have a root system every 12 inches through the entire area where Phragmites was, in addition to the beach grass that is already growing on site and in and amongst a lot of the Phragmites area. And then you have the supplemental shrubs on top of that, which would be much slower to root in. But I think that alone, having beach grass culms growing every 12 inches by the end of the season, is a really good visual, I think, to keep in mind, because I believe that would happen.
Okay, thank you. Just as a follow-up, to make it even more complicated, is there a way of phasing this transition so that the American beach grass gets going before all of the Phragmites is removed? Is there a way of beginning the process of managing the Phragmites at a pace that allows it to hold while the beach grass is getting established?
I actually think that the existing protocol does just that. The beach grass isn't going to like to grow in an area where it's not going to get sun, and it's not going to have the ability to take up as much water as it can when it does rain. And I think that you have that condition already set in place by having it surrounded by an existing beach grass colony, because that colony itself will be primed to take over that niche as soon as the Phragmites is out of its way, so to speak. So I think that you're already kind of set up for that condition. And it's honestly, size is all relative, but in the grand scheme of things, this isn't that large of an area. I think that it's already primed to do that. I don't see any reason to manage it in phases, but it could be done if the commission would prefer it for some reason. But I think the area is already well set up to heal itself, so to speak.
Through the chair, Sean Riley.
Yes, Mr. Riley.
Jen, I just wanted to add to that. So I would assume that you would be doing this early in the season so that you'd have a full season of growth next year, prior to the next season of winter storms, the 2023 winter storms. So you'd have this done possibly next spring, so you could take advantage of a full growing season.
So with the Phragmites, generally speaking, we probably wouldn't start the management of that until later on in the season. But we could manage this particular stand in a different manner. We don't typically do it. It may not be as effective, and it might take a little bit longer to manage it in this manner. But we could propose managing it through the season, and allowing the beach grass to grow in. Sorry, I'm thinking it through as I'm answering. To grow in through the season. We could do it that way. Yes, I think we could do it that way, and that would allow it a little more time. Correct.
Thank you.
I can actually make it even more complicated.
That's what I said.
Great, bring it on.
And that is that, if I'm not mistaken, the Phragmites management in this project is being offered in terms of mitigation for the project.
So we are proposing the Phragmites management as an additional measure for this particular project. One of the things that we recognize is that I think it would just be a huge benefit. I don't see there's any reason not to do it. So I can work on a revised protocol so that the initial management is done in stages through the first growing season versus at the end of the growing season. And if that would help alleviate some of the concerns, I think that's feasible.
Yeah, well, the point of my complicating comment was that if for some reason we went with Mr. Hyde's argument, what would be your option in terms of mitigation? Would you have one? I mean, that's too much of a question to throw at you right at this point. But
You mean if Phragmites management was not a part of the project?
yeah.
With all due respect, I think that would be a huge mistake.
Well, it might be, but nevertheless,
Yeah.
if you're not, I don't know how my colleagues are going to vote, so, but let's, something to think about. We won't address.
Yes, I just want to just make it through the chair a point. So the Phragmites is just about doubled in size in the last, 2 to 3 years. And if you see how these stands just take over areas of wetlands, they take over stands of marshes. So that's why I think Jennifer is saying that this is a good project to stop it now before it does that. Because all it's going to do is just keep expanding into the marsh area.
Okay, all right, well, since you brought that up, I'll bring out my other complicating factor, and that is, you're not removing it, you're not intending to remove it from the marsh in entirety, you're just removing it on the property. So it exists elsewhere in the marsh, and therefore, what are the odds that it will just recolonize in spite of your efforts to replace it with native vegetation anyway?
So, as we discuss on all of our invasive species management projects with you, invasives are not, they are not mindful of property lines, nor are they mindful of where they decide to grow. So with any invasive species management project, that's where the maintenance of the project is critical to the project's success and long-term viability. And this project proposes to maintain that property line and to maintain the Phragmites where it is. And the hope is with some of these projects that when neighboring properties see what can be accomplished and they see the good that comes from managing invasives and they see how areas regenerate, the hope, and often it happens where abutters will join in the fight, so to speak. And those are the projects that are honestly most gratifying for us because we actually get to make a little bit of a larger impact on a larger system versus only, being allowed, so to speak, to do work on certain properties. So the hope with these projects is that they will expand and they will become bigger projects and they will become even more successful because others will understand the need and the importance of protecting that salt marsh and join in.
Okay, it's good to dream.
It happens sometimes, believe it or not, dreams do come true, Bob.
That's what I hear. But what about the question Mr. Hyde had about the glyphosate? Is there an alternative method? Oops, that drove her out of the room. Okay.
I could take over and go back. Oh, he's right back.
Sorry, I was just closing the door. There was some noise out there, so I was just closing the door. So Phragmites, I cannot use a selective herbicide on Phragmites. It will not be effective because it affects woody broadleaf plants, not grasses. Glyphosate, the formulation that we use is always the wetland-approved formulation. The amount of herbicide that is used for Phragmites management when we are talking about a bundling system or a clip and drip system is absolutely minimal. It's only applied to a cut stem. Glyphosate is often been thought as the most, the formulation of herbicide that breaks down the easiest, and especially with the wetland approved version into inert ingredients, so to speak. I would have to do some research on other herbicides that are used for Phragmites. I've never had a commission on Cape or off Cape for that matter approve the use of any other herbicide to manage Phragmites. So if that is something that you would like me to look into, I can do some research on it, most certainly.
I'm not sure that I am thinking of an alternative herbicide, because I agree, from what I can tell, glyphosate is probably, well, it's approved, and so it's, so you say you do use a cut and swipe method. In other words, you cut the Phragmites, you paint the cut part, which would be above water.
Yep.
Right, okay. So, okay. Yeah, I'm not asking you to look for an additional herbicide. I guess what I was thinking is are physical removal methods feasible?
So I think that when there's an established stand of Phragmites like this, I think that repeated mowings will take so long to have any sort of effect that I think the repeated interruption and the repeated human intervention in a dune system, I think that has more potential to disturb soils than honestly than the methodology that we proposed. Root grappling is certainly not something that we want to do in that area, considering the concern for erosion and destabilizing any of the soils there. And as I said, there's also native shrubs and beach grass growing in and amongst the Phragmites, especially on the outer edges. I believe that the methodology that we have proposed is effective. It's effective quickly, and in the long run, I believe has no adverse effect. But if a mechanical method, if you want me to explore a mechanical method, I can certainly do that.
No, I'm not sure. I'm basically just asking questions at this point. I also read that you can burn it, but I can see the problems with burning it too, so.
I would love to burn a Phragmites stand log. That would be a lot of fun.
Just with the
But I don't
flamethrower,
know that
yeah.
you're gonna let
Run
me
through
do
with the
that, so.
flamethrower, yeah, that would be fun. All right, I'm going to get off the microphone for a little while here. I'll come back with a couple of other things, but.
I got a couple of questions, Jen. First of all, on your plan where it says temporary above-ground automated irrigation, could you state that no permanent irrigation will be used on the site?
Yes, we can add that note to our plan if you'd like.
Okay, and also, what about the planting density, the spacing? Can that be increased to help with erosion?
Are we talking about the Phragmites management area?
Yes.
Yeah, that could be increased. I believe we had, hold on, I'm just checking my plan right now. Oh, actually, yeah, we had put it at 24 inches on center to accommodate for the other types of things that are going in there. But yes, we can increase that to 12 inches or even tighter. That's not a big deal. It's bare root culms. It's very fast and easy to plant. I don't think that would be an issue.
Okay, and that won't affect the long-term establishment.
No,
Okay.
not at all.
And
I don't think that would be an issue.
Okay, great. And what about adding like a temporary snow fence to that area while everything gets established?
Like a silt fence, you mean? Are you talking about to prevent any sort of overwash? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, maybe, like a wooden snow fence type of thing.
Oh.
Just talking about a sand fence.
They got like a sand
see.
fence, yeah.
For accretion. Yeah. I mean, Sean, do you see any issue with that?
No.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, would a series of layers of fencing be appropriate or not, or just one fence?
Honestly, the area isn't, it's not that large. I think that one would be more than appropriate. We could always include a storm monitoring, or storm check on it if that seems appropriate after any storm that might come through there, to make sure it's still standing and intact. But I think that one row of snow fence would be more than appropriate for an area like this.
Okay, great. Okay, that's all I had, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? I have a number, but I just want to give everybody an opportunity. All right. I want to, do you have more, Janet? Okay. Not yet, okay, maybe. I just want to go through some of the comments that we received in the letters and see if I can address them the best way I can. There were comments about, there's a question about whether the house is going to have a basement, with the eye towards, with the thought that that might destabilize the bank. And just Sean, what do you?
Yeah, there isn't going to be a basement. It's a walkout.
No basement, okay. There were comments about us putting in a restriction so that the upland part couldn't be built on. I'm not sure that we can do that. That was a previous project. That's where they wanted to build, and that project died for various reasons. But obviously, such a project would have to come before the commission, so it would be dealt with in that way. Unless the applicant were offering up a high conservation restriction on the upland portion at this present time, so.
I think that the chair had a great comment there that anything has to stand on its own merits, and anything that needs to be done up in that area would come before you before it could be done. So there's nothing proposed at this time, and if there is at some time in the future, obviously it would have to come back before you and stand on its own merits.
Right. There were comments about asking for a better septic than Title V. However, I'm not sure that we have the authority to, well, that's a Board of Health issue for one thing, I believe, not ours so much. And it's also, I believe that anything other than Title V right now is considered to be experimental. I'm not sure we can require it.
Yeah,
and plus that's already approved. Yeah, so for all kinds of reasons, for all kinds of reasons, I don't think there's anything we can do in that regard. The questions about whether the house is, it's not in the same footprint, but I will note that, yeah, that's true, but it is retreating. And so for other similar types of applications in the past, we have approved a house that isn't in the same footprint if it retreats, and that's what's happening here. And I think, did you already tell us what the increase is of the new versus old? I forget if you did.
So the green, so what you're seeing is the green is the proposed and the red is the existing. And the buildings and decks total is actually reducing by 2 square feet and pulling back 12 feet from the top of coastal bank and completely out of the flood zone. I know there were concerns about flooding, flood risks. Actually, the location of this house is higher than many of the houses that are in the back marsh. And this also has a full concrete bulkhead with a revetment in front of it. So again, very resilient to, very coastal resilient in this location. And by pulling it back, any potential overwash is now outside of the V zone and in a zone X. So we've taken a long time and a lot of effort to create the shape and distance from the top of coastal bank to fit within the site.
Okay, agreed. And it is largely the same. Yeah, it's not a significant increase from what I can tell from the existing footprint. And it's in a better location. So other comments about lawn, but this will be leading to pollution. But there's going to be a fescue lawn. There's not going to be irrigation. We will have conditions in there that will prohibit the use of herbicides, pesticides, and inorganic fertilizers, et cetera. There was a comment about whether or not I didn't mean to laugh, whether or not whether there's conflict of interest with regard to the analysis of the seawall, because the analysis was done, well, Coastal did not build the seawall. They simply were the engineer, correct?
That's correct. This seawall is going to be here longer than this house, so it's not going anywhere.
And we'll have to accept your professional opinion on that, I think. And then there are other comments about mega mansions, et cetera, but I think that's really not an issue here. That might have been an issue with one of the previous projects, but not this one. And I think that's it. And I will ask whether, and I mean, because I want everyone to have an opportunity to speak on this. And so if there's someone on the line, anybody else here who has additional comments, please, this is a good time to do it. I don't see any virtual hands coming up. And I don't see any hands in the room. Okay. So where are we with this? We've had a few. Our big issue was with the Phragmites. Actually, what I want to do is I want to go around the table and ask whether anybody has any significant issues with this project, any of the aspects of it, including the one that's been talked about the most here, which is the Phragmites mitigation. Okay.
I'll just have to say for the record that I found myself incredibly surprised, and for the first time after 20-some years of dealing with wetlands regulation, to look at Phragmites from a positive point of view. It had never occurred to me, and I have always been the knee-jerk reaction of, oh my God, get it out. And so thank you, Mr. Hyde, for the report that came from Maryland that actually talked about the role that Phragmites can play in stabilizing particular systems. Hadn't thought about that. It's a little bit of a game changer, but I think as I've been listening, and you know, I'm not a scientist. I think that. I hope Jen's right that the American beach grass is going to, it can be done over a little bit of a phasing, not overly complicated, and maybe give the beach grass a full growing season to get established. And if we're lucky, there's no big storm events when that happens, because, you know, Jen, this has been subject to overwash, and we have seen those photos of what happens to that salt marsh when the sand gets pushed into it, and then, you know, that's a significant threat to the salt marsh. But I think that in this case, with careful management and carefully getting the Phragmites out and getting the American beach grass in, I think I'm hoping it's going to work. I think it's probably the right approach. But this is a very vulnerable marsh. This marsh has been subject to, the culvert doesn't allow enough tidal inflow, so, the marsh is a little bit starved, so it's already suffering. So if we can really protect it from any more sand being washed over and into it, that's the outcome we're looking for. So with that, I'm a hopeful.
We're all hopeful.
We're all hopeful this will work right.
Yeah.
Along that line, it might also be nice if we could have some photos of how this progresses, trying this way with the beach grass and the Phragmites, and see that it's working, so that in the future, we hopefully, have a better feel.
That's a good point, Karen. Would you be amenable to? I think it'd be delightful to see something for the first 3 years.
Yes.
Photos and basically a progress report.
Yeah, our plan already calls out for annual monitoring reports, so I can make sure that my staff know to take pictures more often, and I can set up specific times with them. And it sounds like I need to submit a revised protocol to you for its management anyway, so I will include some additional monitoring measures within those annual monitoring reports for you. And I would be happy to come back, at year 1, 2, and 3 to give you informal presentations on it if you'd like. I've done that before with other commissions on various topics.
Yeah, and that might be useful for the abutters to see a more formal presentation on how it's going
Sure.
along the lines, yeah, sure.
You'll just have to see me more.
All right, so I think we're at the stage of wrapping this up. I personally think this is a good project. I think that, especially compared to the projects that were proposed before, this is a ecologically sensitive approach to replacing this house. I think it's been done in a way that minimizes as much as is practical as possible the environmental impact. So I actually think it was a good effort, and I'm sensing from my colleagues that there was no objection to it. And I think you're to be applauded for, I think, the thoughtful approach you took to it.
Thank you. So we have, just to let you know, we have a zoning board hearing on the 13th. So we'd be looking for a letter to the zoning board, hopefully stating that this is a project that you could condition for approval. And then we'd be looking to come back after that.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, so when Sarah asks me for her request, or sends me her request for comment, I will say that, pending the vote coming up, I will say that the commission has approved the project. It's pending an order of conditions, but we don't have any issues with it.
Very good.
Any significant issues, yeah. All right,
Thank you.
thank you. So what, so when are we talking, Nikki?
You said they are being heard on the 13th of
Correct.
October?
That's correct.
So I would say probably be on for the 2nd of November
That sounds good.
for an order.
Okay, I'll move that we continue 144 Chat Harbor Lane to the work session on November 2nd, 2022, with the recommended changes.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, the next order of conditions is 470 Shore Road, James Eisenstein, map 16F, parcel 15A, A8, SE 10, 3554, proposed rock revetment reconstruction, vertical and lateral extension, fiber rolls, and associated site improvements.
Hi, Catherine Ricks here on behalf of the clients. We didn't have any new submittals for this one because we were actually just waiting on the report that was due from Greg Berman for the Tillipee Run ones. And this also had the certificates of compliance, those other two that we were going to do at the same time. So I don't know if you wanted to do the Tillipee Run projects first, go over the Greg Berman report, or just move forward with the 470 Shore Road.
I guess I'm a little confused. So we have nothing new for 470. The Berman report, it was submitted though for the Tillipees.
Correct, but I think you guys kind of wanted to hear what he had to say about that
Well,
before we made the
I
final
suppose,
decision on this.
yeah, in an informal way we did, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So we're basically just looking at what you previously submitted, which is not in our Dropbox. But so I think, let me see if I can.
do you want me to pull up a presentation with the plan, or?
Actually, Nikki, if you could grab the last stuff and put it in Dropbox for us to refer to if you can.
And I know last time we discussed more of leaning towards that alternative 5 with the revetment built up to the base flood elevation and the fiber rolls up to the wave
Yeah.
analysis. And I did speak with the client, and that could be an alternative to go with. We can redesign and move forward with that one, since it is a different situation than what's over at Tillapy. The scarping on this location has been shown to 15 and just above 15. So we do know we need protection up to that because of what's been shown on the shoreline. But that is one of the alternatives that in this area, because there still is some dry beach in front, that we can discuss more of that alternative that I know we discussed last time as well.
Okay, good. Yeah, why don't we just focus on that then? Because I do think that's the salient issue with this proposal. And as you read in the Greg Berman report for the Tellepes, on the whole, he advocates and cites support for the approach of having hard revetment to a certain height, but then a softer solution above that. And where it is possible, I think that is what we should try to do in general, unless there's a compelling reason to go with the hard revetment up to the elevation that you're talking about.
And this is, we'd like to go up further to get that full coastal resiliency and not have to come back and do it, in the next 20, 30 years. But this is definitely an option, and they do have some dry beach in front of here and a little more protection from the barrier. They don't have as much open fetch as the Tillapy Run project, so it is slightly different. So, I did discuss that with the client. So the 15-foot revetment with the fiber rolls above is something that I had put in that alternative 5. And then the revetment is at the 2-to-1 slope, which I know was another thing that was discussed in the Greg Berman report. And this one had already been designed at that more shallow slope.
All right. I welcome that. I welcome the willingness to consider that approach. I'm seeing nods to my right. I'm seeing, so would that affect what would that affect with the rest of your proposal? Let's say the mitigation plan, that would obviously affect it, or would it?
There'd be plenty of mitigation. It would just be that the mitigation that's just above the revetment would also include the fiber rolls and a little more. I mean, obviously we'd have to plant over those fiber rolls there. So
Right.
That would be somewhat shifted. Other than that, it wouldn't change any of the upper mitigation, which we had a good amount of that mitigation. And with the COCs, we were going to roll in the conditions that were in those certificate of compliance requests from the 2 open orders on the site, which have to do with the no mow zone at the top.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like we're agreeable to that approach. I'm not seeing anybody saying no. Well, so you would need to resubmit a new plan.
We need to revise the plan, yes.
Yeah. And what else do we need to take into consideration? I guess that's it. Yeah. All right. Okay, Bob has something.
On the Wilkinson plan, I don't know if you can speak to this or not, but we asked for a mow strip on the north end and a mow strip on the south end. I didn't see a revised plan. I don't know if we got one or not.
Katrine is on. I
Oh,
think
is she?
Katrine can
Okay.
speak to that. I see her on. I'm not sure. I don't believe they had
Hi,
submitted
I'm
one
here.
yet. There.
Yeah, let me just pull up. I was kind of just on standby if I was needed. Let me just pull up our plan. Sorry. So we did submit a revised plan. We didn't necessarily show that strip. We could. The thought was that it's a steep area and it might be hard to mow going down that hill, but we could certainly kind of rethink that and add something.
Yeah, just to
We're
keep
showing-
the
Yeah.
invasives at bay, you know?
Sure.
And I
Yeah, we
think
can
if,
add
if, if I remember correctly, Katrine, was it just the north side? Because you guys had mitigation already on the property on the south, so I don't know if there's extensive invasives down there or not, or if you guys had removed those and it would
It's
just be on the north.
primarily the north side. There's a lot of invasives on that property. So I think that would be where the focus was. We can add that.
Okay, and also demarcation along the east or the west end of that no-mow area,
Sure.
so no one mows into that.
Sure. Yep, we can add that too.
Okay, that's all I had, thank you.
Okay, so I guess when would you suggest we continue from your perspective?
Well, if it was the next hearing, we'd have to have plans done by next Wednesday, which likely won't happen. So if we can continue 2 hearings, which would give us and WED time to get the plans in the next 3 weeks. If we continue to the, whatever that second hearing from now is.
Nikki, is that the 12th?
Yeah, so we have the 12th and we're off the 19th and back on the 26th.
Okay.
So we're talking the 12th?
So then for the 12th.
Yeah, okay. No, this is just another hearing. We're going to have to look at the new, I think that we need to look at it's a fairly substantial revision. We need to look at it before we go to an order.
Yeah, it sounds like it's just, look everything over and
Yeah.
then probably go to the November 2nd for the order.
Okay, I make a motion that we continue 470 Shore Road to the next hearing on October 12th, 2022.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Bob,
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Elise,
Aye.
Cheryl,
Aye.
and I vote aye. All right, well, thank you. We will
Thank you.
see you then.
Do we want, Nikki, I guess this is a question, do we want to do the COCs for this right now, or do you want to continue those to that hearing?
I'd still like to have the order issued before we close out any
Okay.
past ones. I just think that makes the most sense, so that,
Okay, so we'll continue those.
yeah. Honestly, they weren't on the agenda anyway, so.
I didn't see them.
It works out.
And then just before I open the Tilipis and the rest of the things, I do have to be out of here in about 45 minutes to pick up my kid.
Okay, all right.
So my husband's in P-Town, so he can't do it.
Okay.
I was going to say I'm in the same boat, but mine's at high school, so it's slightly different.
Slightly different, yeah.
Slightly.
So I just want to,
Yeah, we'll manage, I think, except the COCs. Maybe, well, does that mean we should do the COCs before we get into the Tilipis? I don't know.
they're all really easy. It's up to you.
Okay, well, we will, well, there is a risk, though.
Well, yeah, if I can do my Tilipy ones,
Let's do that. We have to kick this
I don't think,
certificates,
I
we
mean,
can do
there's,
that.
Tilipy, I don't believe we're going to take an extensive amount of time due to, well, when we get into it. I'm not trying to make it long, so.
Well,
Yeah, so I can open it. I think most of you know Greg Berman couldn't be here today. He is like camping or something. But I can go ahead and open those. So it's 75 Chillipi Run, Chatham Seabreeze LLC, map 14A3, sorry, parcel N131 SC10 3547, proposed rock revetment reconstruction and elevation extension, 59 Chillipi Run, 59 Chillipi Run Trust, map 15A3, parcel 1 N137 SC10 3545, proposed rock revetment reconstruction and elevation extension, 27 Chillipi Run, New Milford Realty Corp., map 15A3, parcel N137 SE10 3546, rock revetment, reconstruction, return extension, and elevation extensions. So some of the commissioners had sent me some comments, and I sent them to Greg, but he had already left. I think he left town like a week ago. So he has not been able to respond to those comments yet. But other than that, I guess I'll let Catherine begin.
Okay, Catherine Ricks here on behalf of the applicants. And I kind of figured without Greg here, and there were going to be more comments, but I'd like to address a few of the items that were in his report. One of the things that was in it was the slope of the revetment. Now, we had designed it at 1.5 to 1 because 27 Chillipi is 1.5 to 1, and due to the location of the house, we can't make it shallower or it becomes within 8 feet of the house. So that one has to be 1.5 to 1, but we did take a look at the other properties, and we will be able to revise those to a 2 to 1 slope. And then it would just be a transition zone from the 59 Chillipi to 27, where it would go from a 2 to 1 slope to 1.5 to 1. So that can be a revision that would go in favor of what Greg Berman says. And we like the more shallow slope. It reduces the wave run up, it absorbs more energy, reduces the wave reflection. It is beneficial to try to do those, and we have done them on other projects. And like I said, the only reason we really did on this was because we were trying to be consistent from 27 over to 75. Another one of the comments was rounding down instead of rounding up. We rounded up our wave analysis to 21 feet. 20 feet is what the rounding down would be, which is what FEMA does as well when they do their analysis. And like I've mentioned before in this area, the FEMA analysis is from 2014, which was before the major break, and that's why we really were looking into more of the wave analysis, because it's changed so much in this area and has a open fetch for waves and has lost a lot of the dry beach in this area, and it's going to have beach placed in this area prior to the work being done, just because of how much has dropped off. And I know that Greg Berman and, we like to try to do as much soft solution in coir envelopes or coir logs and fiber logs, fiber rolls in most cases, just because they're biodegradable, more natural. But in this location, there just isn't a lot of dry beach. The wave fetch is unlimited. There's a lot of wave run up. His report didn't include any pictures from 75 Chillipi, but that's where a lot of the severe collapse of the top of the revetment has occurred. So we really we can, consider a 20-foot high revetment, but we really, due to the collapse we've seen in that revetment there, we do not want to go below the 20-foot, as the currently published BFE was from 2014 publication and not from a recent publication in the recent considerations. Other than that, just any comments that you guys have for me or anything for us to look at before Greg gets back.
Something you just said, Catherine, triggered a question that I had. And I'm not sure this is for you, but I know what it is. It's about, so do you know offhand, or we might have to ask Ted Keon or to look at some photos, is the loss of the beach in this area entirely due to the 2017 break and the wave action that has resulted from that? Or did the revetment itself play a role in the loss of that beach that might have been underway before the break even happened? And part of what I'm getting at with these questions, and you just said that the beach there'll need to be reestablished some kind of a beach before this project, which I think is right, but we've talked in the past about whether or not putting any nourishment on the beach would be futile, given the wave action here, but that's what it got me thinking about, whether or not the beach could be reestablished and whether that would lead to a requirement of some kind of nourishment to keep the beach at a certain elevation so it doesn't go away completely again. That's a lot. I'm not sure there's a question in there somewhere.
And I know there's a report that was done of the shoreline and the littoral transport in this area, but I do know.
Ramsey report, that one?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I do have that. I can go through that to see how they interpreted the interaction with the revetment in this area.
Okay.
I do know because of the break and other items that the water is flowing through there faster than it was. And when Ted is able to speak to it, he has actually informed us of a little bit south of there, a very quick drop-off that has occurred there. And that wouldn't be from the revetment. So that's something I'll look in and see what I can find in that report that discusses that. And I know he can as well.
Right, but that's just all preliminary to the question of whether a beach can and should be reestablished, and whether there should be some kind of nourishment if a beach is able to be reestablished. Is it feasible to reestablish a beach with enough material?
It would be, we haven't done the calculation yet, but it's going to be a great deal of material to build that beach back up. Mm-hmm. And then it's just going to be a matter of maintaining, and other properties around there maintaining the beach to have it flow. But the flow rate through there has increased, so I don't know what the erosion rate is in that area to determine what the amount would be to reestablish the beach and how wide it would have to be.
Right, so did you just say that the beach would have to be replaced in conjunction with this project? That's what got me thinking. I thought I wrote that down. I'm not sure whether you actually said that.
Because of the elevation, in order to have this above mean high water,
right,
it has to be reestablished.
Right, okay.
It does have a permit for nourishment at this time. It's just a matter of where that sand comes from.
Okay. I'll yield to anybody else that has questions while I ponder that.
Ponder that, all right.
Changes things a bit.
Anybody else pondering? Question, Bob?
And if there is no beach nourishment, then it would go to a Chapter 91 permit for the structure.
Correct.
Which eventually is something we knew was going to happen in this area, because eventually the sea level is going to rise and they are going to be below. So.
Right.
Catherine, I have some more basic questions than that. Is Katrine around by chance still?
Yes, she is.
Okay, and again, I didn't get any revised plans on the mitigation, but are you planning to put demarcation again on the northwest end of the mitigation? Well, on the landward side of the mitigation areas.
Sure. Yeah,
Well, I
we can
think,
add that.
and Katrine, I think that makes more sense on 59, but on 75, there's really no need, because it's in the area that's all vegetated.
Good point.
Okay.
But 59, that was something Katrina and I had discussed.
Yeah.
Yes, and on 75, on the southwest portion, adjacent to the neighboring property, there are invasives there, so we were going to do something, add a mow strip or something on that end.
Right. We haven't revised our plan, but we were intending on doing that, including that.
Okay. And then I asked about the erosion on 75 on the bottom of the stairs, the steps, granite steps. And I don't know if you plan on doing anything there to mitigate that.
Was it the question about at the top of the steps?
Actually, the bottom.
The steps are going to be rebuilt slightly differently to more of what our current standards are. So there's more of an updated design than what is currently there. So it should, it's going to be very similar to what the actual rock revetment is. It shouldn't stand out as much or shouldn't be as much of a drop in elevation, because I know the stairs currently there are at a lower elevation set into the revetment.
Okay.
So it is different in the updated.
Yeah, it's mainly through the mitigation area on 75. At the top, actually, I'm sorry, at the top, yeah.
Yeah, so they will be, the top stairs will be higher than, I know it was, there's a lot of erosion right there at the top, because that top step had been slightly lower than the rest of the revetment. But now when we do it, the top step will be with the height of the revetment.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one, I remembered what I couldn't, what I forgot before, and it's something that came out of Greg Berman's report on 27, which is the timing and the interrelationship between the bulkhead and the revetment replacement, and how, at what point the revetment project gets triggered.
And I know he wanted very specific, so we have been working on it. We have a soil boring that's either going to be done this week or next to determine exactly what the material is. And we're doing a phased means and methods on the bulkhead and when the anchors get tied in and when the revetment would be placed. So we will have that hopefully by the next meeting.
Okay.
But it was something we were already working on to determine when the bulkhead goes in, it's a gravity wall, but then at what point can that sediment hold it to where you have to, at a certain point of erosion, where you then have to put the different anchors in. So we will have a plan laid out on when it would be done. We have it drafted, we're just waiting for the soil boring to make sure that it's sand sediment the whole way down, or if it's a different material which would change the loading on the wall.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, so where are we with this?
I don't, Nikki, you said that the commission had more questions for Greg. I think that's.
Well, I think that the question that I had, and when Janet and I had questions, I think I had different questions. What were your questions? I forget. I don't remember now. My question was, fundamentally, I am, and maybe I'm not the only one, who is concerned about the 20-foot revetment. I mean, whether it's 21 or 20. Because maybe this will become the norm in the future. I don't know, around here, or maybe in other places. But it's something that we haven't seen much of. And I think we need to be on very, very solid ground if we start approving 20-foot revetments. And so Greg Berman cited reasons why that might not be necessary. You, Catherine, gave us verbally just a while ago some reasons, counter arguments for that. I think it would be helpful if you could write down to us a memo or something that formally addresses the reasons why the revetment can't be of the type that he was advocating, which is, let's just say, a 15-foot hard revetment with something soft above it, just like we talked about with 470 a while ago. But I would like to have in the record something that's very solidly thought through, documented, as to why that is not an option for these properties. Because that will help us, if that'll help us either not approve it because we don't like the arguments, or it'll help us approve it with confidence, knowing that, well, this really is the best solution for this particular project. and such that we have future applications that also want something like that, we can know when it applies to that and when it doesn't. But but much prefer, obviously, I think most of would prefer that the approach be part revetment, part soft solution. We just need to be on very, very solid ground proving something otherwise.
Understood. We can provide that.
Okay. So where does that leave us? To another, how long would that take you then?
I've already actually started
You already
that,
had,
so-
you kind of thought,
I already started part of that, so it's not going to take me too long to finish it. I don't know if Katrine needs more time to make revisions to her plans, and if not, then I would say that we would just continue to the next hearing.
Who, yeah.
So that would be October 12th.
And is there room in that one?
As of now, I think so.
Okay. Okay, because we're having people dropping like flies up here. I don't want, once we get to a 4-hour meeting, they start sending little notes over to me saying, I got to go. So we like to keep it under 4 hours. And not go in that sense, I mean, they have to leave. Okay, so, all right.
I'll move that we can make the motion to continue 75 Tilapy Run, 59 Tilapy Run, and 27 Tilapy Run to the next hearing on October 12th, 2022.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
And I vote aye. All right, thank you, and we'll see you then.
Thank you. Bye.
Is Nikki still here?
Next up, we have the certificates of compliance. If you're willing, I can open all 3 of them at the same time.
Please do. Yep.
All right. So, and my son is playing basketball in the kitchen, so ignore that noise. We have 10 Sedge Lane, Robert Glass, map 13M, parcel 47B10, SE 1382, a stone revetment. That was work never done. 844 Fox Hill Road Extension, Martin and Elise Smith, map 12L, parcel H3, SE 101280, layout of stairs. This is an accidental, they didn't realize they had a COC already. So we actually don't need to vote on that one. And then 844 Fox Hill Road Extension, Martin and Elise Smith, map 12L, parcel H3, SE 101162, construction of a dwelling and septic system installation. So again, 10 Sedge Lane, the stone revetment was never done. So I recommended approval of a certificate of compliance. Obviously checking off that work was never done and the order of conditions is no longer valid. The layout of stairs for 844 Fox Hill Road Extension, they have the COC, it's old, it got lost. We found it in the file, so we just have to reissue it. So no need to vote on that one, it was already approved. And then the last one was the construction of the dwelling and septic system installation. That was one, it's 1162, so it's an old one that has very few conditions or anything like that for me to go off of, but the area is vegetated, the driveway is smaller than was proposed, the house is in the appropriate layout, so, but again, it had no like vegetation conditions or anything like that, no as-built condition, so there's not much to do other than say it's approved, or I propose approval.
Okay, all right.
Make a motion that we approve the certificates of compliance for 10 Sedge Lane and 844 Fox Hill Road, SC 10 1162.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
And I vote aye. All right. Is the next meeting the
The work session.
the work session? That's the regulation work session.
We have a lot of work.
All right. Any new business? I think not.
I just have one quick
Okay.
thing that Ted Keon brought to my attention today, that I guess I haven't thought about. The state extended all notice of intents for however many days, up to 462 for COVID. But we haven't officially said that we're extending the Chatham local permits. So I just want to be sure that you're all on board with extending those for the same exact amount of time that the Wetlands Protection Act is extending the permits.
Sure, yes.
Why not?
Do we have to vote?
That's what I figured, but Ted
Do we have to vote?
He's redoing the dredging permits, and so he was like,
Oh, I see.
the person is, for the Wetlands Protection Act, said they're extended, but we haven't officially extended our permit, so he just wanted to make sure that wasn't gonna be a thing, but.
I can't think of a reason to go off on our own. Oh. So do we have to vote on that?
I don't think so, I mean, it's a minor thing, I just wanted to make sure no one had any issue with doing that. So
Good.
I would just use
Yeah.
the same formula to extend from the state that I would apply that to the town.
Yep. All right, and just one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Karen and
Aye.
Elise is gone, and Cheryl is still
Aye.
here. I'm still here, and yes, I vote aye. All right, thank you all. That was, how long?